All right, well, we may not have Sarah with us, at least not to start, because she is under the weather.
Okay, going.
So before we have our meeting, we have a couple of public hearings. Welcome, everyone. The first one is for the CDBG block grant application for housing rehabilitation. You will recall, some of you will recall, that we got a grant to help us apply for the housing rehab money. And part of that process is holding a public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to comment on or seeking this money?
Joel, I have something to read.
And then by all means do.
All right, so we are opening the public hearing on community development seeking funding from the Community Development Block Grant Program. We're going to record who is here and provide that. Normally we would have people sign in, but since we are not in person, we can't sign in. So we're going to make a record of who is here. This is the first of two public hearings that are required under the Community Development Block Grant Program at 24 CFR 570.486. The first one is to be held prior to the submission of any community development block grant applications for the year of 2022. And a second hearing will be held, assuming we get the grant, partway through the process with that program. Purpose of the first hearing is to solicit the public's comments on the town's past performance under the CDBG program, to solicit public proposals or ideas with respect to needs of the community, to provide information to the public on eligible activities under the New York State CDBG program, and to answer questions. There's a handout about the program available from Toma Development, which anyone who's interested can get by calling 753-1433.
Is that also the what's linked to the agenda?
That is a handout about our actual proposal for this program. But if people want to know more about CDBG generally, they can contact Toma or they can contact me and I can direct them to the website. I can help people think through ideas. That said, I do want to be clear that the CDBG housing round has two very specific things that it can fund. It can fund homeowner rehabilitation, which is fixing up houses that are owned by people who make 80% of median income or less. And there's also a rental housing remediation project that can help fix rental housing that is rented to people who make that amount. In order to do either of those programs to be successful in a grant application, you have to have a significant waiting list of projects. The work that the town has engaged in so far has developed a waiting list for projects that are the owner rehab side. So unless we had a whole bunch of people who owned rental properties that wanted to get in, it would be very difficult for this year to do that kind of thing. But it is an annual process, and we could do that in the future if there were owners of rental housing who were interested in funding that could help rehab it, that would be tied with an affordability period where keeping the prices low would be required. I can go through the little bit of information that we did attach to the agenda, which is a great introduction to where we're at in that process before we start hearing comments. So this is the program summary, and if Janice would like to give me screen sharing ability, I could screen share, or I can just read through it and you can click on the link in the agenda if you want. So we have a wait list for single family owner occupied home rehabilitation of 35 homes in substandard condition. You may recall that we were aiming for 30. So we have met that goal, which is great. The average cost expected per project there is $28,500 that would be funded. The number of homes that we are proposing to participate would be 13 or 14. Based on our wait list size, that would give us full points under the state's review criteria. So they want to see approximately 3 times the number of homes that you would serve on the waiting list. And our consultants say that proposing a program of 13 or 14 homes would get us that full amount, get us to the full amount that we can request from the state, which is $500,000. And that is broken up between $410,000 for the actual building renovations and $90,000 for the cost of administering the program. That could go to the town. My recommendation would be that that went to a consultant who ran the program, because I don't think we have the capacity to run that scale of a program in-house. And then TOMA has gotten an additional commitment from CAPCO to pay for weatherization of projects for houses that are owned by people who make 60% of median income or less. So that could provide an additional 53 to 71,000 is their estimate, depending on the actual incomes of people who apply. The more of them that we can find at the lower levels of income, the more people could be served by that, because it can only serve under 60%. And that's kind of exciting. I wouldn't have expected it. That is a Cortland County organization, but they will fund projects in Tompkins County because that has been negotiated by TOMA, the consultant we hired, which is a great benefit of working.
Indeed.
So with that information provided, we can open to public comments if there are any. And I'll stop screen sharing, or I'm not screen sharing.
Yeah, and you just read all the information.
Right, but before we give comments, you said that one of the purposes of this public hearing is to comment on what you have achieved so far, what you've done so far. What have you done so far that you haven't already described?
Well, what I said is on past CDBG projects. So my understanding, although I know very little about it, is that in the 90s, the town did a CDBG funded home ownership rehabilitation program. And then in 2018, the town received a CDBG grant to do an analysis of what homes needed help, the amount of substandard homes. And that work, even though it's a few years old, informed the list of people that we sent surveys to and our kind of expectations about the size of program that we could have for the town.
Any other comments here?
Well, that wasn't a comment, that was a question.
Yeah.
My comment would be that, I think this is a pretty nifty sort of program to have. However, as David pointed out, and as the material says in one of its sections, there are different objectives. Rehabilitation sounds great to me. At the other end of the spectrum, new construction seems like something that I'm not as comfortable with. So to the extent that this involves improving existing housing, I think this is a really fine thing to be doing. That's the comment.
I don't remember new housing being part of what we intended to accomplish with it.
Right, I'm just reading off of what's in the material that David provided. Objective C, new construction. Objective D, manufactured housing replacement assistance, and Objective E, water and wastewater lateral assistance, which also sounds interesting.
Mhm. Well, these are all things you can do CDBG grants for.
Mhm. Well, I'm just reading what's there.
But ours is specific, is it not, David, to rehab?
That's correct. What we are proposing is a rehab program. Those are all different kinds of programs that can be funded under CDBG. And, you know, it is appropriate for the town to take comments on if everyone thought that we should not be pursuing home ownership repair and that we should be pursuing new construction of affordable housing, you know, that would be useful information for the town and would be good for guiding the town's efforts. Although, you know, as I mentioned, I don't think there's any way we could get an application in to do one of those other objectives at this point. But that is the purpose of this required hearing.
Other comments?
Rhonda has her hand up.
Oh, does she? I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Rhonda,
Well, I think it's a good thing to pursue, and might help some people who really need it. My issue is that, as I said last night, I'm not sure how the people were selected to receive the questionnaires, but when I asked, tomorrow is the Danby Food Pantry. It's on the third Thursday of the month. And last month, when we were all waiting at the door of the church to get in, I asked everybody if any of them had received a questionnaire, and not one of them had. So I think there are a lot of people who are being missed, let's call it that, missed in this whole thing. Another thing is that I don't know how this grant is going to work, but there are some, I don't know if this is a true grant or if it's actually a loan in disguise, as most grants are. And so what the homeowner is expected to do then is to sign some sort of a document that says that they are engaging in this loan, and that if they stay in the house for 3 years after the project is finished, the amount of the loan will be absolved. The problem is that almost every person, in fact, maybe every person who was standing at the door of the church last month and will be standing at the door of the church tomorrow are of an age where they have no idea how long they're going to be in their homes and would not want to engage in some sort of a home equity line of credit where they would have to pay that back if they didn't stay the 3 years because they ended up going into a senior living facility. So these things are very tricky, and I've had offers of them in the past and have, whenever I've gotten them, have turned them down. You know, I can't guarantee I'm going to be alive tomorrow, let alone 3 years from now and still living in my house. So I think, and of course, it's the senior community that really has the trouble making payments on huge projects like the $12,000 that I had to pay on my roof last year. You know, that was an enormous amount of money for me. And so anytime you have something like that, it really is hard for people to manage, especially people on fixed incomes. And you know, I'm not sure that how this thing is going to pan out. That's the end of that.
David, do you have any information you could, any light you could throw on that?
I mean, not exactly. Of course, this is a voluntary program, so no one is forced to participate in it if they don't want to. Rhonda doesn't want to participate. She doesn't have to, neither does anyone else who doesn't want to. There is generally some kind of, you can call it a clawback clause, because you can't give government money to someone who's going to turn around and sell their house tomorrow to make significant improvements and then pocket the government money, the people's money. So there are usually some kind of requirements that if you sell your house within a certain amount of time, you have to pay back the money that was given to you with the proceeds of that sale. But of course, that is totally up to someone to decide whether or not it works for them.
Okay.
So I had the opportunity to engage in a sort of grant, home equity line of credit that had a 5-year clause on it. And I turned it down because I think it's just too much for somebody who's my age. And that's unfortunate that those sorts of things are like that.
Mhm. Doesn't, okay. Any other comments? I'm not seeing any, so let's close that public hearing. And open the next one, which is on the expansion of the Danby Hamlet neighborhood zone on Bald Hill Road. For those of you who are regulars, and most everybody here is, we've had a previous public hearing on this, and there were a number of comments with concern expressed about the potential impact of having this zone extension, how it might impact the surroundings of Jennings Pond. And the board took that into consideration, and we decided to modify the proposal to create a buffer, in effect, between the zones. We made it a little bit smaller, took away the possibility of a corner being included that might have that had some people expressed about what can happen on corners in Hamlet neighborhood zones. So so how far back is it? 200 feet, David?
That's correct.
Yeah, and the map reflects that modification. And because that was a significant change, we had to have another public hearing. This is that second public hearing. Is there anyone here who'd like to comment on the revised proposal? Ted?
Lowering my hand before you even got it raised. I would like to thank you all for making the change that removed the corner from the Hamlet neighborhood zone. I think that was just a dangerous thing. Plus, it was getting just a little bit close to the pond. So thank you. I will observe that one of the reasons given for making this change, the change in this case is the parcel that fronts on Bald Hill Road, is to compensate for the loss of potential neighborhood development as a result of the solar farm by enabling access to an otherwise inaccessible parcel, interior parcel. And I have to say that part of it does not sit very well with me. I mean, then, as was mentioned in the previous public hearing, one of the reasons that neighborhood was enthusiastic, or at least accepting, if we don't want to put words in their mouth, of the solar farm, was that it was a better alternative than neighborhood expansion into their backyard. And while this project wouldn't necessarily expand into all the backyards, it would, speaking in general, expand into the backyard of the same people who preferred a solar farm to expansion. And I think that if that reason is a consideration, and I can't see any other good reason to make this change, then I still think this change is not appropriate. The neighbors really don't want it. I can't speak for them. I do live, up at the other end of Lieb Road. I know my own feelings, but I think that if the neighborhood understood what the reason why you're doing this, or the reason it was stated, they might be out here today too, as well, speaking, asking you to be cautious about doing this. Thanks.
Other comments? I'm not seeing any hands. So let's close that public hearing. You can call the regular meeting of the board to order at, was it 6:21? There are a bunch of additions to the agenda, all of which I think we could put down into the business section of the agenda if people are okay with doing that. Whether we want to put it at the beginning or at the end, doesn't matter a whole lot to me. What do you think?
Sure.
Beginning or the end?
Doesn't
Uh, The beginning.
Okay, let's go to the beginning. Are there other additions or deletions? Not hearing any, so I guess we can jump in. Privilege of the floor is next. Is there anyone who'd like to address the board on any matter?
Yeah, I would, Joel.
Gary?
I just wanted to report that the Teledare was up and they changed the positioning of 3 of the cameras. So we get a better view of the front door and the parking lot. And we can see the library desk in the work area over there better.
Right.
We've got monitors in the clerk's office and in Steve's office. And they get a mirror image of what we see. And also I sent an email to everybody about stopping down and having Teledare put the app on the phone. And the only ones took advantage of it was Steve and David and Catherine.
Mhm.
So everything is done and up and running.
Great.
Yeah, it looks good to me too. I got to see the view from the for the meeting room camera, and it really is much improved.
Yes.
Mhm.
I like the improvement on the front entryway too.
Gary, have you been there for the nighttime view yet? I mean, can you
I have
see it in the
not.
night?
I have not.
It'll be interesting to see how that part works.
I was actually here last night and it does go into a night mode, so you can see.
In the
Good.
parking lot.
Mhm.
Good.
There were a couple of things that Steve and I were discussing about it, but I don't know if this is the right time to bring that up, so.
A little tweaking wanted. Okay. On the whole, though, great improvement.
Definitely.
So thanks,
Thank
Gary,
you.
for facilitating that and for,
Well, you're welcome. Everybody can see what they want to see now.
I will say one other little thing. If anybody does install it and you don't have unlimited data, you have to make sure you completely shut that app off because it'll just keep going and use your data unless you're on Wi-Fi. So I don't have unlimited data right now. I thought about it just in case I ever turn it on and forget, because it'll run in the background. But I like the idea that if I'm not there and something happens, I can help, which is part of the purpose of it.
Mhm.
It was a good job, and the guys were really professionally very helpful.
Yes, they were.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was a nice step in the direction of increasing safety.
right.
So thanks again.
You're welcome.
Other comments on privilege of the floor?
Well, what the heck? I might as well bring up one other little thing. And that's about the cleaning the monument. And thank you very much, Keith, for volunteering your time and your machinery. That was great. And then the guys came back and finished it off. But there's one other thing they want, so I'm going to help try to work with them to figure it out. But I 100% agree it's needed. Hinges, we need to make a gate, an opening that can be accessed with it would be locked, etc. But the way we got in,
You
I
have to jump
brought,
over the fence, right?
no, it's way too dangerous. You think it's not till you really think about it, really look at it. And actually, Danny's grandson one time was trying to get down from it and jumped, and the spike went right through his shoe into his foot.
Not good.
So I brought 2 ladders, and they climbed a ladder on the outside and they climbed down a ladder on the inside. So it's a very simple, in my inexperienced, unknowledgeable view, to it's not closed tightly at one of the corners that's the desirable one. And there is a famous, or I'm going to use that word for lack of a better word, guy in Trumansburg area who's even done work on a gate for the Royal Palace. And turns out that his son is one of the Aceto, his son or his grandson or granddaughter is dating one of the Acetos or something like that. So we might have some connections and maybe get some help with that.
That'd be good. He's an outstanding iron worker if you can get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That'd be cool.
just to throw it in, Jim Holohan also does that work, and I think worked with that person. So
Oh,
Okay.
he
excellent.
might be,
Excellent. I don't have the right contact, so I only could do it the music way. And somebody else has some other ways, but Jim would be an excellent way.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leslie.
he
I had
just,
no idea Jim had that additional talent. Yes, so let's see. Where were we? Additional comments. Did I see Ted go up? Maybe
Ted,
not.
you're muted.
You're muted now.
And unmuted now, I hope.
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to, not that we have a huge crowd here, but to tell you all that we have a couple of upcoming events for the Danby Community Council. In a week from today, a week from yesterday, we've brought in the Tompkins County Health Department for their Healthy Homes and Neighborhoods program, which among other things, is an offering by the health department to work with people either by the phone or by Zoom or by actual physical inspections of their homes to suggest ways that they could be made more healthy. And as I understand it, they're also providing some freebies. I believe smoke alarms, perhaps even fire extinguishers. And we're trying to let the community know about that. Also upcoming, and we're not asking for any volunteer targets or even suggestions for targets, will be a hatchet and knife throwing demonstration and in small amount of instruction, perhaps. That'll be on September 11th. And we have more music jams coming up in the future. So that's one. Second, I noticed that you are talking about 2 potential committees, which I think I could fairly say a professional interest in. As you know, I was in the past a participant with the Tompkins County Broadband Program right up until the point that the current committee, well, the reasonably recent current committee stopped holding meetings that were open. And I have also I'm a techie. My other professional interest is in sound and sound reinforcement. And you will recall that probably 10 years ago, I submitted some suggestions on how a noise law could be implemented. And oddly enough, I think, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think that Warren and I have the same sort of feeling about it, that there is a technically right solution, but that it may not be the most expedient one for the town to pursue. So I'm interested in both of those committees. Thank you.
Good to know. Thanks. Anyone else?
Yes, I would like to acknowledge the passing of Amy Cusimano, who was working with the pond, the Jennings Pond, for over 20 years. Spent a lot of years doing that for the town.
Yeah, I was shocked when I saw the obituary.
So was I.
We should probably do a resolution of appreciation for at least for the family. Keep it for next time.
All right, I can do that.
There was I mean, Amy was the pond program practically, so it's a big loss for the town. Also not, since we're mentioning things coming up, West Amy picnic's on the 27th at 4:30. It really is a picnic. Yeah. And you're all invited. I was talking to Todd's contract of the water district yesterday saying, get the town board members to come. You would be most welcome. And I would love to have somebody else to play badminton with.
People should remember the market on Friday. This Friday. at
Is this
Dotson
Friday?
Hall, Yeah.
Mhm.
4 o'clock.
Good.
Well,
Okay.
excuse me, what was that at 4 o'clock on Friday?
The market, the monthly market.
In fact, there will be music there.
Mhm.
And I'm looking over at Bill Evans' daughter, Veery, will
Oh, yeah, very.
be
right.
singing, and as will Pamela, who is listening to something else right now.
Mhm. Good. Janice, is there any correspondence?
No.
We have had a bunch of announcements, sort of part of Village of the Floor, but
Mhm.
and I see Dan isn't here, but Keith is. Keith, would you like to tell us the good stuff about highway?
Only the good stuff.
So, yeah, we got a lot of good stuff going on. We're fixing roads. We're trying to do some paving. And we're trying to do some preventative maintenance on some of these roads. I'm a firm believer in preventative maintenance. And as you all know, that paving's very expensive. If we do the preventative maintenance, we do some chip sealing this year, it'll really, hopefully, these roads are supposed to be done like every 5 years, and some of these roads haven't been done in 20-25 years. So it's, if we can hold them together for a little while longer, it'll keep building up the road, it'll increasingly get better instead of increasingly get worse. So that's where we're at. We're trying to come up with some paving solutions, and we have some money in our budget that's our CHIPS fund that we would like to use for that. And
it's on the agenda later in the meeting to
Yeah.
Yep.
to agree to use the money that way.
Yep. And yeah, basically, we're using a new recipe for paving these roads. I'm glad to say, because I think that'll be very good for the road, the longevity, this formula that we're using for the pavement part of it. I think it'll last a lot longer than what we've seen in the past.
What's different about it, Keith?
So we're trying with it's called limestone. It's a crusher stone, and crusher stone actually, it compacts and it holds together on its own without oil being added. It's a phenomenal, that's why people use it like on They might spend a little more money to use it on a driveway or something because it's very hard stone. It's not soft. It doesn't break down into dust where a lot of stone does. They have a lot of different hardness. And so the limestone is very hard. It doesn't break down. It locks together very, very well on its own. And I'm very confident a lot of people are going with it. And when you put oil on it, all it will do is lock it together that much more after it's compacted. And I think it'll be a good, long lasting bond for our roads. So the ones that are in the worst shape, we're trying to step it up and do a little bit with that instead of just putting oil stone over them. And we're trying to shape up the roads. Troy Road, for instance, we're going through and we're checking all the culverts. We're checking people's driveway aprons that come out over the road. Some of them have to be lowered down a little bit. We go up and talk with all the residents. If their pipes are bad, we address it. We walk all the ditches now. We look for materials in the ditches, the different types of stuff that might be leaking under the road, which could be rock, which could be shale. There's all of these things that I'm taking into account when I'm looking at a road. I'm trying to find what's going on with the foundation of the road. You need to look at the foundation of it before you can address what surface you want to put on it, because it starts at the bottom. It's just like a house. You want a good foundation for your road. So, and that's what we're trying to get to with the paving part of it. And then the ones that we do pave, they will also have to be sealed, which is a chip seal, just like the surface treatments. It's a one sealed over the top of it. It'll be sealed up good for winter, and then generally they're good for 5 years after that.
That's the same as oil. Is it different than oil and stone?
Chip seal is oil and stone. Yeah, that's correct. Yep. And yeah, there's little different methods and different stones that we're trying with this too. It's depending on the stone that we get, where we can get it, and cleanliness of it is a key thing too. It's who has the best stone. And I've been going to gravel pits and seeing, I get out, I check, we're constantly checking products to see what is the best for our roads, because it really makes a big difference. If something's a little dirty, the material that we're putting down, it will not hold together. We have to be very careful about cleaning our equipment when we're handling the stone. There's a lot of things to take into account when we get ready to pave. So we're treating that very, very carefully, and hopefully we can get these next couple roads done, paved. We're looking at Troy Road being one of them. It has had a lot of erosion as well. So it's a very uneven road. So you go down the road and there's wheel ruts everywhere on it. And it's also got about 10-foot ditches on the side of it.
Yes.
10 foot deep from the erosion. So we've addressed all the erosion issues. We've addressed all the pipes already on that road. We're currently ditching and stuff on that road now. So that one there, we're getting it into shape and getting it ready for paving. Then the lower part of Durfee Road, we would like to do that too. Right up to Steam Mill Road. So it'd be from like Hornbrook Road up to Steam Mill, just that small section. That road's in good shape, but it needs to be shimmed on the edges. It's very rounded. Cars could go off the edges. And I see Leslie laughing up there.
I know. It's like, no. I get the middle of the road. No, I
Once you
get the
get,
middle
once
of
you
the
get
road.
me talking, I'm not gonna shut up.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, it's
Right.
pretty. It actually may, I mean,
We're not going by your house though. We're just a steam mill.
now the flip side is that it does make people slow down, when
Yeah.
there's only, when it's sort of down to almost one lane, people do slow
That
down.
is so true. That is so true. I get so many people call me, say, fix my road, fix my road, fix my road. And then I fix it and then they're going too fast on the
Yeah.
road now. So that's,
There's just so much water, this is, Durfee's one of those places. There's just so much water. The road, you fix it and 6 months later, you can see where the water is.
we're fixing below you and we're fixing up above you. So
Hasn't been much water lately.
no, very dry.
Yeah.
Very,
Till
very
today,
dry.
yeah.
Did you get rain?
Oh my gosh. Oh,
Yes,
we
it's
had
been
awful. The cats were upset. Yeah, it was
Well,
bad.
lots of thunder and lightning, but we didn't get
Oh,
diddly
we got
spot over
tons of
here.
it. We got a lot of rain. Yeah.
Not here.
Sorry. Sorry,
Yeah,
we needed it too.
yep. We got a quarter of an inch yesterday.
Oh, well.
About,
Thanks, Keith. Thanks for
yes.
coming.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
All right, the consent agenda. There are now 3 sets of minutes, which I hope everybody got a chance to look at.
Yep.
And I think all the questions about the 3 warrants have been addressed.
Yep.
Are there anything outstanding remaining, or are we good for a motion?
I'll move the consent agenda.
A second.
Okay, Janice,
Yes, I've got Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Schnabel is not here, Woodworth,
Yes,
and Gagnon.
yes. All right. Which brings us to business, taking from the top, which we decided were the additions and deletions. The Safe Streets for All grant. David, you put this on, you want to tell us?
I do.
the link didn't work, so I couldn't see it.
Oh dear.
Funny, it worked for me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Did you go in through the link on the agenda as opposed to going to the meeting folder?
I went through the agenda.
Okay, so the agenda didn't work.
Maybe
Well,
I'll,
that's what I did too. I was able to do that for a
Okay.
change.
It worked for you, did it?
it does, but
Sorry.
maybe we'll figure that out another time and.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
should work for everyone, but.
Yep.
Technology is fun. So you will all remember that I did ask for your kind of feedback and general acquiescence to start this conversation or to participate in this conversation with other municipalities in the county that are pursuing this planning grant. So this is a grant that goes towards, it's federal funding for writing a plan for improving safety on streets. There's a coalition of communities around the county that's being led by the city of Ithaca. So the city of Ithaca is the lead applicant. They are writing the grant, but they want to work with as many neighboring municipalities as possible. And each municipality will have their own section in the report, the study of what can be done to improve safety. So Tompkins County has agreed to participate as a partial funder. The town of Caroline, we have discussed, and I am asking the board to make a resolution to officially participate today. The town of Dryden, town of Ithaca, town of Lansing, the village of Cayuga Heights, and the village of Lansing are all engaged in the conversation. Newfield and Enfield, I believe, are as well, but they seem less certain. So what this grant does, part of the new infrastructure, federal infrastructure bill provides funding for street safety improvements. In order to get that money, you have to have a safe streets plan. So this is the first step that would enable Danby to be able to pursue money for street improvement, street safety improvement projects in the future.
I looked at this and it sort of begged the question, what sorts of things might we be the beneficiaries of?
So I think the thing that would make the most sense with the goals of the program would be working with the state on improvements for the state routes where they go through the hamlets. Those are the things that make the most sense. The state is a partner in this grant application. So New York State DOT, the wing of that works in Tompkins County, is participating in the drafting and guiding this grant proposal and would participate in the study. So it's a great chance to be able to work with them on how we can make these roads safer for people who are in cars, for people who are riding bikes, for people who are walking, for people who are taking transit. And the state really does take that broad look. And having this open that door to be able to come up with a list of things that we would like to see done and have it documented in a plan, then makes it easier to apply for funding, whether it's our streets, the county streets, or the state streets that are in the town.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah. It is a meaningful commitment in terms of the cost share.
I know, yeah.
It is a substantial cost share. So it's 20% of the overall budget. I think we are looking at, the high end of an estimate for a budget to be a really complete project of $750,000. I do think it's important to make sure that this is a really good project, especially across all those municipalities. And it's a large scope to work with that many municipalities. The cost share, it's 80% funded by the federal government, 20% local. The county has put in $10,000, and then the rest of the participating municipalities are putting in an amount that is proportionate to their population. And there was a lot of discussion of should it be proportionate to lane miles in the municipality or people. I tried to argue that it should be proportional to tax dollars, but we ended up with people. With lane miles would be much more expensive for places like Danby. We have more miles per person than places like the city. In this instance, with the city's component of this would be, I think was $58,000 would be what they're putting in. We're among the smallest, obviously. I can actually share that table if people are interested in that. But what we are being asked based on our population to contribute is $6,018.
Yeah, the practical reality is that the only way we could participate in this is part of a joint effort.
Yeah.
Correct. So I'm going to share a window here. So this is the breakout of the proposed partners and what everyone pays. The only community that would pay less than Danby if they participated is Caroline, and it's $200 less. So I do think it's a good opportunity to get in on what I think will be a really high quality project that could really help us start with those safety, pedestrian, bike, and car improvements that we want to see if we're going to have the kind of hamlet centers that we want, and also looking at crash safety. We did some initial looking across all of the municipalities for where you're seeing real fatalities and serious injuries. And Danby has slightly higher percentage of injuries and fatalities than the similarly sized municipalities. It was interesting to note that in most of the places, it's really the county and the state roads that are the most dangerous. But a program like this is a chance to work with those entities so that we could have a say more than we usually would in things that can change on roads that we don't own.
Mhm. And of course, the reason the statistics are there because the volume of traffic and the speeds are probably highest in those roads.
Yeah.
So we'll need to plug this into the budget if we decide to approve this, but I think it's a worthwhile way to get our foot in the door, so to speak, particularly with the state DOT.
So the city of Ithaca's taking lead in this
Grant.
study.
In
The,
the grant and the study. So
okay,
writing the grant,
and the study,
yeah.
and then what?
So we would hire a consultant. There would be representation from each municipality. There would be a chapter in that report for each municipality, and they would interview us. They would look at all the crash data. It's likely for a place our size, the crash data isn't going to be that useful just because there's not a lot of crashes. You know, it's so rare. You know, it's interesting if there happens to be 2 crashes on one road and 1 crash on another road, but that doesn't necessarily, you know, it's too small of a sample size to tell you a lot. So that gives us, on one hand, that's not great because we don't have great data, but on the other hand, it gives us an opportunity to give our qualitative feedback and have that have a larger role to play, essentially. So it would result in a plan that is essentially a list of priority projects that are then fundable by with this federal program for safety improvements.
And would the priorities, how far down on the list are we gonna be?
I think it's priorities by municipality.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
All right.
then we would then be able to go after money.
So we'd have to go after the money. I mean, the city
Exactly.
isn't helping with that. Yeah.
Yeah. But if we were doing a project that, you know, span municipalities, if we were looking at 96B near the town of Ithaca border, you know, we could work with the town.
Mm.
Something along those lines.
Mhm.
And just process wise, what the city's proposing is that they will actually pay everything up front, and then they would be reimbursed by the towns and by New York State. So they are putting in their budget $750,000 for this.
Whoa.
That would then be mostly paid back.
So David presented this as a resolution that we can adopt. Would somebody like to move it?
I'll move it.
A second.
Catherine seconds it. Discussion further? Ready to vote on it? Psych, okay. Janice,
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter, Hunter, sorry.
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
Gagnon.
yes.
Oh, yeah,
Laura,
that, I just wanted to mention that as you were going through that, I was just looking at some numbers. And just in that little short amount of time, I was going through the budget of some things that were left over, and have been able to come up with 3,700 so far. So I'll keep looking and see how we can fund that.
Yeah, and this would be in next year's budget.
It'll be, it's gonna
That'll be in
next
next year, not in this year. Gotcha. Okay.
I got
Okay.
some ideas for that other money though. Let's talk later.
Yes.
Oh, did I just
Yeah.
open your word? Okay,
Yeah.
good to know.
And then we had the public hearing on the CDBG block grant application. And now we have an associated resolution, which is the follow-up to our having hired the consultant to get it ready for us. Want to share that, David? Basically, just do a quick once over.
I'm muted. Give me half a second. Proceeding at such an efficient pace.
I'd like to believe that.
There's- All right, so this resolution essentially grants Joel the power to approve the application, to accept an application in an amount not to exceed $500,000, which is the maximum that this program you can apply for. And if that grant is approved and granted to the town, to allow Joel to accept that funding and enter into an agreement with the state for financial assistance for that program, as well as any other necessary actions to implement the proposed grant program if it's funded by the state.
We have an all-in-one resolution.
Yeah, really. I move that we allow the supervisor to apply for the funds and to do all the rest.
You're basically moving this resolution, right?
Yes, yes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That was Pat. You want to talk about it at all? This is what we've been positioning ourselves to do here. You know, when we hired the consultant to help us get it ready to do,
Yeah.
and now we're at the point where we're actually going to do it. I hope we get it.
Maybe the only discussion part I would have is that periodically we keep this in front of the public's knowledge, so they, you know, if there is somebody who should have, if somebody drops out or doesn't want to do it, somebody doesn't know about it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, well, to that point, Rhonda raised the issue. Is the list of participating or eligible households a fixed thing, or can we modify it?
It's just a starting point. So once we open the program, we'll reach out to those households as well as anyone else can sign up to participate. And you know, we may need to have an evaluation criteria if we think we're going to get more than we can handle. But
Well, sure, but that would be a good position to be in, is to having to
Yes.
pick and choose who to help. Yeah.
exactly, you know, so it has to be something that's doable within the time frame, and
Yeah.
you know, there's various criteria. But when we start the program, you know, we have to have a list. We have to be able to show the state that we do have people who we know want this to get the money. But then once we actually start the program, it may not be any of the people on that list who participate, but they feel confident if we have 3 times the number of slots to fill already kind of lined up, then they feel like they can trust giving us the money and that we'll be able to spend it. Because what they hate to do is go through all the trouble of giving someone money and then you have to give it back after 2 years. You know, it's a lot of wasted effort on their part. So they just want to make sure that we do know that there are people who actually need it here, and then who actually gets it will be a whole nother.
Right. There would be a lot of wasted effort on our part as well, because this is a non-trivial task to go after this money.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Further discussion? Are we ready? Okay, Janice?
I am not muted. All right.
Yes.
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes,
Woodworth,
Yes,
Gagnon,
Yes. Next up, the agreement to spend highway funds. See, can we screen share that? If Keith can comment, who's got it? Just link to the agenda.
David, do you have it or do you want me to do it?
Oh, I was getting ready for my next thing.
Okay, I'll get it. I'll do it.
Janice.
Where did I put it? Here it is.
I've got it up now.
Oh,
You'll have to wait for me in a second. When I have to do the next.
thanks.
Here's the list. So first question I have, Keith, is this the balance of projects for the year, or is there more to come?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep, there we go. This is, this would be the rest of what we're doing for the year. That's
Okay,
all of this, yes.
that's what I thought.
Summer's almost over, you know, Joel.
There might be, but there might be another one when we start to work on the bridge project, right?
Yeah.
On the-
Oh, on the bridge wasn't inclusive,
Bridge.
okay.
And I know you just mentioned something, Keith. I'm just reminding you just from what you had mentioned, that you don't have on this list. You said something about, was it Durfee Hill, Bruce Hill? Which one did you just mention?
Durfee.
We're talking to
Durfee.
Leslie about it at the top.
Durfee.
Oh,
Dirt-
Bruce Hill is on here.
That's almost all done.
Do we have that? We have Bruce Hill on here.
Oh, the culvert's on here. Yep, Bruce Hill culvert.
Bruce Hill,
Yeah.
okay.
But I think that there was some more other paving that you were thinking about. Just, we know it's request number 6. Keith, I didn't mean to interrupt you or anything. I know it's request number 6 and we kind of been being a little choppy with it, so there could be a 7. And more likely there will be a 7.
Is there any money left to do it? Request
The
with?
first request is sold, yeah. I
Yeah.
can tell you though, that still, even after all these projects that you're looking at here, and the amount, what we turned in for chips and everything we've done so far this year, we're still looking at about $240,000 worth of chips funds balance that we can still use.
Well, that's terrific.
Yeah. Laura, can you,
You might not ask for some ARPA money when the ARPA committee gets going, but
Mhm.
We
I'm
would-
just throwing that out there, looking into space too.
We would hopefully like to roll a little bit over too.
That's what I was wondering.
We
Yeah.
don't want to go into next year being broke either.
yeah, yeah.
We'll get some new allotments next year, but it will be nice to have this.
Right, and the nice thing about CHIPS funds is you can roll them over.
Yes.
I didn't hear for sure what you were saying about bridge issues, and I am curious about the West Jersey Hill culvert. I think that's in the works now, but I don't know. Is that,
Yeah, I think we did that last time, didn't we?
that's not what I was asking though.
I mean, when's it going to happen? Is that the question?
Well, sort of, and I, just to make sure, I don't know whether it really is, because, and the only reason that I'm particularly, every once in a while, Marnie asks me, especially because she's thinking about the school buses.
Yeah.
So I've contacted the school bus garage and I've also limited the weight loads on it. They are aware that they are not to drive on the road. They redo their routes for these purposes if we do weight restrict them.
Yeah,
And that was the first thing that I did when I found out that, I go down, I measure the insides of these pipes to see if there's movement in them. I take photos, I take comparable photos to see if there's anything going on that's, it's quite a process of, making that decision of, I don't just look at it and say it's okay. But it's in pretty rough shape. We're ready to go on it. I think we're just waiting for Army. I think we're waiting for Army Corps of Engineers. Maybe we're waiting for one decision on it, I think, but.
right.
And we're also waiting for, the county is helping us with a bid package. We're working at putting that bid package.
Oh, the
together.
bid package, yes.
Yes,
yes.
we've already got the pipe. You guys already approved the pipe.
Yeah, right.
Yep, yeah.
And then the bid package will be, when that's put together, that'll go out in the paper and get some quotes and. That's
Is
where
that-
is.
Is that, so we're ready to go except for a couple of approvals that are still needed in order to make it happen.
Yes.
I move that we accept or approve the request number 6 as presented.
Need a second?
I'll second.
Pat? Any further discussion?
Thank you. Big thank yous.
Yeah, it looks like a good list and a pretty ambitious one too. Janice,
Going well here.
Connors.
Aye.
Thank you. Hunter.
Aye.
Woodworth
Yes,
and Kenyon.
yes. Yeah, 2 ayes and 2 yeses, right?
What does that add up to?
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Keith.
You're welcome. Thank you. Now,
Next.
now it was my turn to speak, right? I started too early. Sorry about that. Thank you. Thank you for everything. You guys have a good night. I'm gonna
Yep.
dart out here.
Okay,
Hi, Keith.
Night, Keith.
next up, the Hamlet Neighborhood Zone expansion. We have a multi-stage process here. We haven't done the seeker yet on this. David, you want to lead us through?
I would be happy to. So to remind everyone where we are in the process, we did make changes based on the first public hearing. Also, due to concerns in the first public hearing, I made sure that we had consulted with other involved or possibly interested agencies. So I spoke with New York State Parks, and they gave me a letter of no comment. They were not concerned about the zoning change. They said if there were something that rose to the level of needing a site plan, they might have comments on that at that time, but they have no concerns or comments about the proposed zoning change. And I also, Tompkins County provided the same feedback. They had no concerns about the proposed zoning change. So the next step would be to do seeker. And we have seen these documents before, back in the 7/5, June 5th meeting. We took an initial look at the, or at least it was provided in the packet. I don't remember how much we looked at.
Was that, was it 7/5 or 6/5? Or-
7/5. But we can take a look at the, I'll share screen at the part 1 again. You'll recall that part 1s for zoning changes are not very interesting because you have a title and a brief description, and then you click question 1, does the proposed action only involve the legislative adoption of a plan, local law, or ordinance?
Yep.
If yes, skip everything else. And the answer to that is yes. And that is filled out, although hidden behind my box here. There we go. Get a question, Leslie?
I was just moaning.
Okay.
I mean, the proposed action is only, looking at adoption of a plan, law.
Yeah, to add these 2 properties to the.
Right,
and we
right.
shift it from
So
one zone to the other.
it'd be part 2 that'll deal with what the potential activities could be because of the change.
So part 2, yes.
Okay, all right.
Look at part 2 starts with the questions based on part 1. Does the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopting land use plan or zoning regulations? We've read through these many times before. Will it result in a change to the use or intensity of land use? Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community?
Okay.
Will the proposed, yep.
So the question 2, so with this change, more activity or development can happen on this land.
Yeah,
It could.
right.
Right.
Question is that a large impact or?
It's too small a piece of land to be a large impact.
Don't know about that.
So
Mhm.
the part of that
Size
is,
doesn't matter.
part of it is what can happen without further environmental review. So what could happen without further environmental review is you could add 2 more houses to the 10-acre lot that has 2 houses already. And someone could possibly, if they could run a road back and have access, it's possible that you would be allowed 4 houses on that back lot, which is actually owned by the neighbor of the property that fronts the street. So it's possible, and you'll see in the narrative on the next page, there could be up to 6 additional houses possible without coming back for further review. If someone wanted to do anything larger, they would have to come back for further review.
That's under the existing zone,
Yes.
Yeah.
No, under the proposed zone.
under the
Under the
proposed change.
change.
Right.
Yeah.
Under the existing zoning, what would be,
Under the existing zoning as rural 2, they could add 1 house to the back lot and they couldn't add any houses to the front lot.
okay. So there's a net of 5.
Is this, and this property is part of the Zen Center?
The front property is owned by the same owner as the Zen Center. The rear property is owned by the neighbor to that, the white old
house?
revival house, yeah.
Right.
And I put it in because I like zoning maps to look like they make sense, and if it was left
yeah.
out, it would look really weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Like my property.
Um,
Wow.
Okay,
So number 2 could be, yes,
well, if you think that adding 5 houses is a significant impact, you could.
6 houses. Yeah. You don't?
It's
Mm.
significant.
Sounds significant to me.
Sounds significant to me also.
I think it's a moderate to large impact,
6 houses?
yeah?
If nothing, moderate. That's, I mean, I think so. But maybe nobody else does.
No, for some reason, I don't think, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not lit up when I'm talking, so I thought, I must
Mhm.
not be. Anyway, I think it's significant too. The only, what is not said in here is that each one of those has to be, there's at least site plan review, et cetera, isn't there, David? Lots of
There would not,
review.
no, there's a lot of criteria for what they would have to go through without site plan review. But it would not be required for the first 4 houses on a lot do not need site plan review.
But they
in
do
the
need,
handbook.
to have, in this case, they probably have to have individual septic and a lot of other things that might preclude their being able to do it in the first place.
If they're
They
on the
could
same lot,
cluster?
they could share septic. You wouldn't be able to sell them with shared septic,
Right.
at least not very easily. But
Yeah.
you could have them, you could have them share a septic system.
Yeah,
Um,
until and unless we create some other mechanism, but at the moment, that would be the only way is if it was, excuse me, if
Ooh,
it was,
bless you.
thanks. If it were under individual ownership, the health department doesn't have a problem, but if you're
Right.
separate ownership, they have a big problem with it.
Mhm.
So you're right, Catherine, if there's individual well and septic, it might be more constrained. They want at least an acre. And if it's a multi-lot subdivision, they want more than an acre probably.
I guess I would like you to say again why we are considering this.
So there's a couple reasons that I suggested it would be in the town's interest to do it rather than having an applicant come and ask the town to do it. The first being, it is only extending by one parcel from the existing boundary of what we consider to be the hamlet where we want to focus development. We have a lot of the land that was kind of planned for hamlet development is now gone from the solar farm, eating up the land that we previously said made sense for hamlet scale development. You know, that is the place where we've said future housing should be, is in the hamlet, and we lost a portion of it. So it makes up for that. The other reasons that this lot in particular sounded good to me is that it does have, you know, someone who has a history of doing, I think, reasonable quality work that has been done sensitively. And they had, I gather, spoken to Jason in the past about some plans that he had said he thought would work, that would not work under the new zoning that reduced the density that's allowed. And, you know, it did seem to me that the choosing, you know, does it end at the lot where it ends now or at the next lot after that, is somewhat arbitrary. And I didn't see a particular reason why you would not want to include it if there was an interest in hamlet scale development in that area.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, right now, I mean, it's right opposite Jennings Pond. I mean, that to me is a concern. So if it didn't go through and the Zen Center wanted to put in 4 more little houses, they'd need to go to the planning board, go to the zoning board.
They would need a variance,
They'd need
and
a variance.
it would be a very substantial variance.
I think in terms of the impact on Jennings Pond, the fact that Jennings Pond Road properties are already in this this zone would make a bigger issue than having something that across the road that has very little road frontage on it, much less being impacting on the Jennings Pond itself.
That's good. Took out the 200 feet closest to the road, so it's going to be back in quite ways.
So Jennings Pond is a high priority preservation area, right?
Pond itself, yeah.
Let me put up
Right.
the map.
Right. That whole side of the road is, I mean, given the extent of the wetland and things that are in there, it makes sense.
Right, and it's a state park.
Yeah, that's true. I always forget that.
Yeah, let's see, where are we?
So I'm going to the zoom in here. So you can see this additional map was provided to make sure that everybody was clear about what was being proposed. So the lot, previously we looked at this whole lot being included in the new zone. This is the piece that has been removed. This chunk, everything that's within the stream buffer and everything that's within 200 feet of the road there, starting a little ways after the existing house. There's an existing house here and an existing house here. So this is where the pond is. This is what Pat was referring to, is that all of these properties are. in that zone.
Okay.
So,
Right.
and then, you know, further around that Jennings Pond is the state forest.
All right.
And then low density residential across the street, and to this side. Along pieces of it, there's the rural 2 there and there that includes the Zen Center. So the Zen Center is, you can see some of these little buildings here.
Mhm.
what do you think the questions when both I forget the two, the park authority and the other, what do you think they might want to say they would have comments about at a later date? I mean, I know you can't know, but
Right. So they said things that would trigger site plan review, which is, for example, more than 2 additional houses on this lot. They said, they'd like the opportunity to comment on those. They might still have nothing really to say, if that was similar density to here, for example. They might want to make sure that, some comments I could imagine is, hey, they should share driveways instead of having one driveway for each house, or we should be doing what we can to minimize the impervious surface, or hey, instead of a big 1-story building, what if you had a smaller 2-story building so you have less impervious surface in that watershed? Things like that are the kinds of comments that I would expect. I would be surprised, honestly, if they made comments on something that small. If we were talking about putting in a 50-car parking lot or something like that, I'm sure they would have some things to say, but a few houses, I would be very surprised.
where would when you mentioned a road, where was that, and with the potential for a road in the to access the back lot?
Back here. Yeah, so I mean, you could imagine if this is the current owner and they wanted to do something, they could extend a drive back there, or if they sold it to somebody who owned this parcel, they could possibly access it that way. To be honest, with the amount of questions that there've been about it, I don't think it's very likely, but it is a potential.
Right. And with a road, there are some possible restrictions on making sure that it's not just going to be a gully washer down towards the road, et cetera, things like that.
Yeah,
So that design of a road would have to be approved somewhere.
that's correct. Yep.
It's going to be a road as opposed to driveways, but
Yeah, they have an existing driveway that kind of winds back here and serves us, and it connects all the way over to the Zen Center.
Mhm.
So the purple is a solar farm?
Correct.
if it weren't purple, it would be orange. Up to that line in the middle there.
Correct. Before we rezoned it, the Hamlet neighborhood went to this line here.
Right.
But that changed when you adopted the plan development zone for the solar
Right.
farm. But previously, this line was where this parcel, it split this parcel between the Hamlet neighborhood and the rural 2.
If you scroll a little bit to the north, the orange is abutting near, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It shows it more clearly.
So you can kind of see graphically why it could make sense with that. I'm pointing at my screen that you can't see me pointing at.
Yeah.
The
I can't see what you're doing. Yeah.
We can see
similar
it.
distance from the center.
Right.
It doesn't not make sense to include those. Yeah.
Well, it did. I mean, on this edge of that sort of line is Jennings Pond. That's what the difference is.
That's the different parcel. There's 2 separate parcels here. The parcel, the rectangular parcel in the back makes sense to put it in there because it makes less sense to keep that little square out of it. It looked really weird having this big thing with this rectangular taken out of the side.
Oh, yeah, no, I was talking about I thought people were talking about the northern border up there of the solar farm, and it's the neighborhood is up there on the other side of the solar farm. But there's no, state park or Jennings Pond up there. It's down here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, if you look at the problem with Jennings Pond, having the Jennings Pond Road in the orange is a lot bigger impact on the pond than having that little piece on the road there that goes into that.
Yeah, we don't know, we don't know what they do. We don't know if they,
We don't know what.
move to Florida and
We don't
somebody
know
else
what those
buys it.
people on, we don't know what those people on Jennings Pond Road will do. And they have
Right.
free access now, and that's right on the pond.
It's fairly likely that if there's going to be development on this, on the property, the front one, it's going to be behind the two existing houses and not up
Right.
close to the road.
So the impact on the pond is
Mm.
not likely to be bigger.
No, we
than-
don't. Yeah,
I'm not so sure it's about the impact on the pond specifically, because as you say, nobody has any control over what happens 20 years from now on any of that land. And the buffer really does help me a lot. I mean, that buffer at 200 feet is pretty big. It's not huge, but it's thick enough. It's
It's-
substantial, I shall say that.
The size of a
Substantial.
city block.
So, I mean, it was arbitrary, I shouldn't use that word, but when we were trying to figure out the zones in the first place, we went
Right.
all through all kinds of things, trying to decide, should you go on the property lines? We don't want to just cut through people's property. We went through all of that, and that's part of the reason it's the way it is right now anyway.
Right.
Because of the, that trying to decide where to make the zones begin and end. It was a challenge, to say the least.
Yep. And we had, we started out with if the property is in at all, you put the whole property in, but then there's some big chunks there and it didn't make sense to include the whole thing, which is why we put the dividing line down the middle of it.
Right.
right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't, I don't know how much of a hardship it would be for somebody to go for a variance. It doesn't seem to be that much of a hardship, but and I think the fact that those people all along that road wanted the solar farm instead of houses. I don't know. I think it's an issue.
Yeah, but I think the scope of the huge purple
Mm.
for a big development is a lot different from at the most 6.
Mhm.
So there is that. And
Yeah.
I think the one difference with BZA is it takes more time and it costs money for the individual person to go about and do that. This one would make it a lot simpler. And if it makes sense, and to me, it makes sense looking at where the rest of the orange is, the light orange, to add it in there and not impact the pond. It impacts the pond less than everything on Jennings Pond Road. I'm kind of surprised at that.
I do want to say that if the board legislatively found that a zoning change to allow that level of density here was inappropriate, I would strongly encourage the BZA to not grant a variance on that precedent that the board had said
right.
that's not appropriate. The board's legislative actions set the expectation.
Well,
I
and
do-
they set the zoning.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so, and there's, variances are going on and on. So I don't know. I understand what you're saying.
But in this case, if the board explicitly says they don't like it, then that explicitly goes to the BZA. Normally, the BZA is dealing with things that have not been explicitly excluded by the town.
I feel like
board.
I feel like I explicitly looked at the zoning and where things were. And actually wish some things had been different. And it didn't happen, but
I'm sure that, I think,
you
I'm
know,
sure we
I
could
felt
all
like-
say the same thing, I mean, it was something of a compromise and it's not set in
Yeah.
stone either.
there was a compromise, yeah.
Yeah, I do. It's up to the board to decide if that development potential is something that you think is appropriate. and it's entirely within your authority to say yes or to say no. Say
mean-
it's not appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, for me, looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, potentially 6, with no with no issue at all. If somebody went for a variance, they'd have to identify, where, what, how many, it'd be a different story. Maybe it'd be a variance for 3 instead of 6. I don't know. So, I don't know.
One thing I want to be clear on is that we are talking about, it would have to be 2 different projects. Because it's 2 on this lot and this
Right.
lot is what has 4.
4,
I wonder if
yeah.
the board would be more comfortable not including that lot in the rezoning at all,
Which lot?
The upper one, you
the
mean?
back lot.
I actually would be more comfortable with that, but I didn't think that was an option, and I don't know how fair or unfair. I mean, they could always come back and ask for a rezoning of that plot in the future, couldn't they?
They
Sure.
could.
Yeah. So if we.
I might
if it
feel a
were-
little better about that.
If you excluded it, you would then have only possibility of 2 more,
2 more.
which clearly would be toward the back.
I'd feel better about that than potentially 6.
Yeah, I would too, but and then I'm, playing devil's advocate both ways. I don't know whether 6 people would want to have houses there right by the solar farm either, so that maybe that's not even, maybe it's just the maximum that could happen, but it's very unlikely that it would happen. But we don't know those things. That's the
Well, it's
bottom
unlikely
line.
at the moment, but doesn't mean it's going to be unlikely forever.
Right.
We're zoning for it, which is to say, and we've been zoned for a lot of things for a long time. Not, just because you're zoned for it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but
How many apartment buildings could go back there?
there's a number
With
of
site
units.
plan review, as much as you could get septic for it if it was approved by the planning board.
Be interesting.
Now, there's
Well,
not a
see,
lot planned, so.
I would feel a little better without that back lot being included.
Me too.
Well, I'm okay with that. I mean, so we're basically saying we're backing off of it again and want to do yet another revision before we consider. Is that what folks would like to do?
That's what I'd like to do.
That's what I'd like to.
Okay, well, then we make it a motion. That, that the proposal be revised to exclude that upper lot. And then, because that's a significant change, we'll have yet another public hearing.
Well,
And we'll go another round.
Huh.
So I'll move that.
I'll second that.
I feel a little guilty about not speaking up a little louder last time, sorry.
Well, it's all right. We're sort of homing in on the target here.
No guilt allowed.
Well, and I do like the last revision of the 200 feet. That really does, that I think is a big deal. I appreciate that too.
Yeah.
Okay. Ready to vote? Yes.
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes,
Canyon.
Yes. Okay. So that will come back to us.
Are we do we need to have another public hearing?
I
yes.
think so. It's a
Oh, can we,
substantive change, right?
can we do that for our next meeting?
Do we have to have the county and this comment again?
No,
Less of an impact. I mean,
yeah,
Yes,
you don't have
it's
to
also
have them.
It was a lesser impact last time too, but,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so, if you don't think it needs another round of comments by potentially interested agencies, then can we go ahead and schedule a public hearing for next time?
Just want to make sure we have.
We got time enough to be scheduled for next time?
We do.
Yeah.
The next meeting will be the 6th of September. Yes, that's time enough. So.
Yeah, if I put the notice in by the end of the week,
Okay.
I can put out the 10 days ahead of time. That's
I
required.
move that we have a public hearing in the Hamlet neighborhood zone, Bald Hill neighborhood zone on September 6th at 6 o'clock.
What was that about?
Hmm?
What was that about? No. Oh, that you're
No.
saying that's what we're doing about right now, right?
Right.
She just moved it. I'm waiting for a second.
Yeah, don't we have to move?
Yes, we do. And you
What do you
just made the motion and we did a second.
Who
Oh.
seconded?
I thought, if it's another one, I'll second it.
Yeah, okay.
I already did, I thought.
Third it, yeah.
Sorry.
Do we have a third?
So public hearing, September 6th, 6 PM.
Yes.
Well, it's preceding the board meeting.
Okay, do you need a vote?
Yep.
Yes,
Okay, are we ready
Yes.
for a vote?
Yes.
Mhm.
Connors is already saying yes.
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Woodworth,
yes,
and Gagnon.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Thanks for pointing that out, Libby. Broadband. We had a survey done with Chuck Bartosh. And it's still hanging out there. We know now what next. And there was this very interesting forum held by the TCOG with Hunt engineers that covered the breadth of things that one could do, ranging from the municipal broadband approach that Dryden is taking to on one end to the to the subsidizing line extensions by existing providers at the other end. There are intermediate things that can be done, which was what a lot of that was that forum addressed in part. And then there's an alternative that's also out there with Starlink now. And I'd like to see us explore what makes sense to get, to extend service to those that don't have it, and whether it makes sense to look at the bigger picture and say, well, how do we combine short-term with longer-term solutions that would better serve the whole population. So I spoke to Zach Lind about it, and he's interested in being he's willing to chair, in fact, a working group to look at what the next steps might possibly be. And Jeff Lang also contacted me because he's got crummy service up on Bald Hill Road and was very interested in the subject and said, will you be willing to serve on the committee? And he said, yeah. So we got two people who are very much interested in doing it. I also spoke to Marnie Kirschgessner, who's also got no service and no way to get it either. And she's willing to, what she says is, I'm not sure I can be useful, but I'm willing to meet with them and see whether or not whether there's anything I can meaningfully contribute. And if so, then she's willing to plug in. And then early in the meeting, you recall during privilege of the floor, Ted pointed out that he's got expertise and interest as well. So I'm raising the issue. I'm proposing that we in fact charge a group to explore the options and on our behalf and report back for what they found and what they might suggest. What do you think?
I'd like to hear a little bit more about the two that said that I don't know enough about them. And I don't know why they're interested. I don't know enough.
Yeah.
You
Those
mean,
two names.
well,
Zach
Zachary
and
Lynn,
Jeff.
Zachary, recall, was our representative to the, I guess it was sort of a TCOG
Right.
broadband committee. So he was our the town of Danby rep to that committee, which made recommendations. Well, was supposed to be working with the county, with Nick Hemholt. And in the end, the county basically backed away from any kind of commitment to countywide fiber, which is what we were kind of hoping for. That they might take a lead role on it rather than having us all trying to figure our own thing out. So that committee, I wouldn't say was formally dissolved, but it's functionally defunct. But he was our rep on that, which is why I approached him, because I thought, see whether he might be interested. Jeff Lang is I'm not sure what particular expertise he has. I mean, he's done a lot of looking in order exploring his options to see what could be possible. He has I don't think, and at this point, the options as laid forth by Hunt are sufficiently, I guess, apparent that that they could be researched, and it might be that they might come back and say, this looks promising. We should hire somebody with expertise to tell us how viable it would be and what it would cost to pursue it.
I mean, I'm inclined, I mean, without,
I mean,
having
we
spent-
could.
what?
After we could, solicit interest if anybody else is interested besides the three
I-
who have expressed interest.
I mean, I mean, I'm inclined to say, let's have Zach and Jeff, who I don't know at all, meet and let's hear, I'd like to hear what they think they can do, what they think is the best avenue. I mean, I don't know about getting a whole bunch of people.
Well, I think they would agree that they don't really need or want a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, I would like to, I mean, have they talked to each other? Do you know?
I don't know. I've talked to each of them and each expressed a willingness to work with the other. I don't know whether they've talked to each other yet.
Yeah, I don't want to have a long-term commitment with a committee. I'd like to hear if they said that and they said they'd work with each other, I'd like them to meet, write something up why they think that they should or what they think at all, because I don't think we've had so many people say they were going to do things. And different kinds of ideas. So to charge a committee without, I'd like to hear a report back from them before we go further than saying, okay, you two guys get together and talk and come back to us within 3 weeks or something with something written that we can look at. I mean,
And just ideas of what, how they could pursue, options. I'm sure Zach probably has, I mean,
yeah, the Zach
He's-
name, I do recall that, but the
Yeah,
other
I mean,
person.
he's with the city school district, right? I mean, it's,
He does. I mean, they both got thoughts. And Zach has, I had a fairly long conversation with him. He's got some pretty interesting and well-formed thoughts about how we might proceed from where we are. So, I mean, I could ask him to basically report back, have the two, and it's not a bad suggestion, having the two of them. I was just looking for a way to, how do we move this forward? Because we had the study done. That's nice. Now what? What's next? And none of us has said, well, I'll just take this on and
right.
figure out what to do. So, I mean, I just said, well, I'll talk to Zach and see
Yeah,
he's willing. And Jeff had reached out to me with a fairly long letter, email saying, what's up and what can we do? And say, well, you want to help out? So that's how these two meetings came forward.
Any chance that we could see that letter? Just curious.
From Jeff?
I think it was
Yeah.
private.
Yeah.
It might be illuminating for me. I mean, and I heard you say something about schools, I think, but I'm not
That was
positive
Zach.
you used that word.
Zach Lind, I think is,
Okay. The
like,
reason I mention that is that's one thing that we have learned over these 2 years of this is the absolute the
kids,
school
yeah.
situation where kids and education has really pointed out how bad it is without
Yeah.
internet.
Yeah. And
That
schools and
influence them.
also work at home. For,
Right, well, work at home, of course, but this kids, it's, parents having to go someplace and sit in a parking lot with a kid,
Yeah.
it's just, it's ridiculous.
mhm.
Is there
So that-
someone we can just set up a committee with those two people?
Or
Yeah, we
or
can.
ask them to get together and come back at the next meeting and give us an idea if they have any
How-
bright
how-
ideas.
How they might proceed to
Yeah,
to
yeah.
undertake the task.
Yeah,
Okay. So I'll have them talk to each other.
yeah.
Uh,
And tell Marnie just to hang on.
yeah.
It's so awful. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
people are having trouble with the clarity connections.
Right,
We
Yes.
haven't. We only
Yeah.
had trouble once, but
Well, and some of us had trouble with spectrum too, so.
yeah.
well, I
Sometimes,
haven't had any trouble with Spectrum since I've been here, but
Wow.
yeah.
I wish I could say the same thing.
Well, there's always
Sometimes the service slows to the point where it doesn't work for a Zoom meeting. I get this, internet connection is unstable message.
No, I hate that. Yeah.
Hmm.
I haven't gotten that in a while.
I had it on, I had it for the planning board meeting.
well, the other thing is if any of them have I think sometimes the issue is our own equipment as well. So that
Yeah.
that
Yes.
matters and things like,
I think I got that figured out.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
A great long length, yeah.
We can have an
Okay.
outreach committee that goes house to house and helps people with their lousy equipment. Yeah.
Yeah.
right,
So I mean, so there's, I hope some of you watched that forum. But it's not just an issue of do you have service? It's a question of how good is the service for a lot of
Right,
folks.
right.
And also the cost of it. So, and it came to light in recent communication. I forget now where it was from, but low-income people are eligible for subsidies on their internet access. Of course, they have to have internet access for the subsidy to do anything. But the amount of money that's allocated for that subsidy is underutilized in this county. There are a lot more people eligible for it than are actually apply for or using it.
If I could just add one detail that you missed there, Joel. It's not only whether you're
Oh.
low income, but your ISP has to be participating in the program. And guess what? They don't.
Right? You didn't know that. That would account for why the
The
subsidy
first
was
thing,
low.
when I heard about that program, the first thing I did was inquire about that detail, and I found that regardless of my income, I was not eligible because my
Mhm.
ISP didn't see it as being worthwhile.
Mhm.
Just thought you'd want to know.
Thanks. All right, so essentially the possible creation of a committee here is going to be deferred until we get a chance for Jeff and Zach to confer with each other and report back on how they might approach the question. But that's my sense, right? We don't need a motion or anything to do.
I actually move that they meet once or twice and come back to us with a report before we even call it a committee. I mean, that's me. I just don't, it's been one committee after another
Mhm.
that has trouble and, if we want to move forward, we can't just say, okay, have at it.
I'll second that.
Okay,
So would you like this to be a resolution?
looks like yes. Well, she made an motion, so it's going to be a resolution.
I guess so.
Okay.
That just doesn't get seconded.
Motion.
So the motion was that they meet a couple of times, once or twice,
Yeah.
and then report back on how they might proceed.
Yeah.
Or not. They
Or
might
not.
not.
Right.
That's the point.
Okay.
Right.
Shall we vote?
Connors,
Aye.
Hunter,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes,
Gagnon.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Noise or excessively loud sounds. We had a discussion, and I was wondering why it jogged my memory when I looked back through the minutes. It was the July 20th meeting, Leslie, which is the one you missed.
Yeah.
We had a discussion about this, and the upshot was that I was going to approach Warren about whether he'd be willing to chair a committee,
Oh, okay.
which is where this came from. And I did talk to Warren. Catherine saw him first, and asked whether he was interested to get involved in that way. He said yes. So I approached him, followed up. We had a fairly long discussion. And
No.
he's very willing. And in fact, is he still here?
yes.
Yes, there you go.
He's been here the whole meeting.
Yes, well, because I asked him to come so we could deal with it at this juncture. So thank you, Warren, for being here. And this is on here as we're trying to figure out how to proceed in order to evaluate the issue and come up with perhaps better solutions than have been put on the table so far. And what came out of the discussion last time was the trying to remember now, the Pat and Leslie both had suggested that it would be good to take a look at how noise complaints had been handled, people who had the issue, how it was resolved. And suggestion whether maybe we should go back and see for those who had problems, how did it work out? What did they do? Did it work? What worked and what didn't work? Talking to Warren, and you can elaborate on this if you'd like, Warren. He said, well, there's no reason to limit ourselves to what has happened in Danby. There's this, other communities have this issue also and have dealt with it. And, looking at what worked and what didn't work there will be part of looking at a bigger picture. So, there's a couple things that were, I think, in my mind as being next steps that were wanted. One was we needed somebody to head up the group, and that Warren's willing to do that, but they need a clear charge, what it is we would like them to do. And then we need to address the issue of who's going to work with them, if anybody. So perhaps it would be appropriate, Warren, for you to share your thoughts about how we might best approach it.
From what the public reaction and what our internal reactions were, and my experience in these areas, my thought was to attack this as two different pieces of legislation, as it were. One is sort of the clear and present danger ordinance that gives law enforcement the teeth to cease and desist in the moment to stop something that's really egregious. And whereas measurement is really in the broad strokes, where it says, this is causing harm. People have been up for 3 days, they're about to lose their minds, or it's literally just damaging to people. And there just needs to be some safety valve that's in place. So that's one kind of law that I think is less complicated, and I was willing to sort of come up with a subjective and objective version of that, and sort of let you decide. I'll just give you one of each, and then you can figure out. It's like, no, we want the subjectivity. No, we don't want the subjectivity. And then the other one is the much more, well, I hate to use the word subjective again, but it's the nuisance law, the nuisance noise thing. And obviously you'll have to figure out what falls in what's basket, but hopefully it'll be so clear that that won't be a real difficult parsing out. But, you know, one is clear and present, and then the other one is, it gets a little bit more difficult. And that one, I think, starts to become, I think it's because it's already a neurotic thing. Sorry about the judgment there. But because it's so
Yeah, no,
open to grayness, I actually think that this one is objective, because otherwise you would be neck deep in this forever. And I think it gets so murky and funny and stuff. But I think there might be some way, you know, not millions of dollars of equipment or whatever, but at least I can go out and investigate what other municipalities are doing, just get a general idea of what people think is out there, what is actually out there, what
Mhm.
people actually use. I'd like to talk to law enforcement. I'd like to talk to some other municipalities. Yeah, just knock on some doors and get a rough idea of what we're talking about. And then I could do a subjective and objective too there on that one also. And then you can decide there. So yeah, so I'm thinking that there's there's a safety valve and maybe a objective and subjective way of figuring that one out. And then the really niggly one that is really going to be splitting hairs. And then Joel and I talked about, and you folks also talked about the idea that there might be a voicing board, mediation board, just some way to bring it in front of some people so that even the process of, I don't know, quelling some of the hopelessness is sometimes really helpful. And that, maybe there's some, the formation of some kind of clearinghouse so that when an issue arises, that there can be, okay, let's talk about it. What is the issue? And then one move might be a letter from the board or zoning or code enforcement or from some entity, just sends a letter and say, hey, it looks like, efforts have been made to try and deal with this and it's not working. Would you like to meet with us all? And then just sort of mediating a discussion. I don't know. That gets sticky. This gets into like Davidness here. It's like, how much can you call yourself mediation without going down that road? Something informal, but just so that people are not losing their minds and getting really hopeless about this. And then you start fighting with people and it gets all,
Yeah.
I really
like
like,
blather.
yeah, I like your ideas. I was initially thinking, well, we need some time to, what are the problems? And then you divide them up into categories, like you talked about, applied, some are, hair pulling, I'm not sleeping, to, man, those people piss me off, or their dogs. But, some way people need relief somehow, for when it's really bad. And then there are, people who target practice, and there are people in the winter that ride their snowmobiles on the road, and, you know, is that something people are gonna complain about? It would be nice to have something that's subjective. And can, but can give relief to those people that you were talking about that are have nowhere to go. And the town, I feel like the town should help with that somehow. And in the end, it might be a law. It might be a law. But maybe not. I don't know. I like what you said.
I like what you said too. Thank you. Plus,
Well, and
Yeah.
it sounded, Warren, like you're talking about doing this all yourself.
He's starting tomorrow.
Yeah.
yeah,
Actually, he's done already. He's been doing it.
yeah.
Well, you got pretty well formed ideas.
Yeah.
So, do you feel the need for additional participants?
We can, we can kind of work that as we go.
Yeah.
If it starts to feel like, wow, I'd really like to
Have some
just
company.
canvass 10 different municipalities and stuff, can somebody collate that? Or, that kind of thing. Step one, right? You even said it, it's like just even the timeline you're talking about, to sort of take this year or 6 months or a chunk of time. Step one is research and just feeling like, the folks that did the noise ordinance stuff, it was a great start.
Yeah.
And then it just needs to just get fleshed out a little bit more. And then just a couple of options in different areas. And then I think maybe come back to you in an amount of time. And then just say, okay, this is it again. And then maybe have I don't know, just some sort of chewing session, just sort of I can funnel that to you, have a box folder or something, and just start putting stuff in it and give you a chance to look at it. And then
I like that.
This has me wondering
Yeah.
whether the kind of assistance that Warren might need might better be staff support. But
Clerical.
yeah, well,
Um,
yeah.
I have a question for you, Warren, because the way you describe this for us is non-threatening, 100%. You haven't had a horse in this race that with a name recognition horse in the race right now. And I'm wondering, is it possible for you to write something really, really light and that basically a relief valve? Look, we haven't forgotten about you.
Now I can't.
And I think Pat's trying to get on the other.
I think she
computer.
just got kicked out. Yeah.
Yeah, so she might be going on the other.
Yeah.
Anyway, to write something that could be inserted into our newsletter that just would take the pressure off because people on both sides are there. We don't need any more of this. And I think the idea of your presence would be wonderful, not charged by anybody else that we've had in here.
Yeah.
And it would be nice if it came in your words, if you're willing.
Sure.
Right
And
tomorrow.
it's basically just outlining
There she is.
what we're about to
she is.
do, which is essentially gathering research
Yeah.
and just getting a sense.
Yeah.
We'll come back to you. We're not,
Yeah.
no laws are being written,
Right.
nothing is being, nothing.
Right. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that the words that I love that you said safety valve and quelling.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can come up with great words and
Yeah.
And I do think it's important that we talk to, Sheriff.
At this point, but you just got muted. Pat.
Yeah, you're muted. I think Warren talked about talking
did,
with
he
law
did.
enforcement.
Yes, he
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's people local. I mean, Rich Curtis, and then there's a couple other people that have given feedback. Um,
Right.
The state police and the Tompkins County Sheriff.
yeah, yeah.
You've compiled, have you not, Leslie, the comments that people have made? And that could be shared with Warren as sort of
Yeah.
um,
I'd
Yeah.
love to.
a database of
I could just
A
say it.
litany?
Yeah.
Well,
It's, I mean, it's, you know, people have been really, you know, and it was my neighborhood actually who first initiated the last effort at trying to do something. And people, you know, people were suffering. I mean, it's, you know, it feels like a light subject, but it's not. And it's where people live and it's where people sleep and, you know, try and enjoy the outside. And it's a complicated issue. And part of the enjoyment might be target practice, like in my neighborhood.
Well,
you know,
and it might
so-
actually be building a
chainsaw
car
it.
in a shop like that with all that heavy equipment right behind you.
I was gonna ask you, what is that back there? It's a car. It's a where?
It's actually a green screen. And this was one of the more absurd things that I could
Oh.
put behind me.
It's not a
Just
personal thing. Yeah.
entertain you.
It's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'll just point out that we do have the public comments in the work drive
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
could.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks for putting those in there.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that was helpful.
okay.
I mean, the other thing is, and we can think about this over the next month, or Warren could think about it, you know, what should we do with complaints that come in? Is there something, I mean, Janice gets them on the website, right? You know, and you're starting to, you've got a folder with all those in it, right? That,
Yeah, so so it depends. So if they fill out the form on the website, it goes into a spreadsheet that I can definitely share.
okay,
And if it goes to the town board, then it's via email and I print a copy of that and put it in the folder.
okay. Okay.
Step one could be, so I'm doing this researchy kind of thing and collating and just giving you some choices on
Okay.
what would be legislation. If conceptually, philosophically, you think a mediation board, and David will come up with the guardrails, because I'm sure you can't say that, but you know what I mean. In spirit, it's, if you think you want to create a panel or a clearinghouse or something, that's sort of a parallel path to what I'm doing.
Okay.
It may be influenced by
Oh, right.
whatever legislation we do, but if you think that's an important thing, that will take time,
Yeah.
because you'll have to figure out, are those, how, it's almost like our conversation about what would be the complement of this committee,
Mhm.
in that, you know, do you want somebody on one side, on this side, one side on the other side? And I think my comment to you is, this is research. I'm
Yeah.
basically the librarian, so
Okay.
a Democratic or Republican librarian doesn't really make any sense. But that panel might be where you think about having somebody from both influences, you know, or a couple of people. How many people do you want it to be? You know, what that complement would be. And so that, I throw that back to you, in that
Yeah.
can happen immediately, once backed up by whatever legislation this might be. That group would, if you want them to have any teeth, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So it sounds like you're throwing it back to us in terms of,
Well, so we need to have, you know, if Janice gets any complaints, or if any of us hear complaints, we should talk about it.
what the complaints or how to deal with them.
Both,
Oh.
Yeah.
or if there's any way we can help.
I think that's part of what we want to develop here. We need to develop that before we just bring them up to the board. We need to look at procedures and how we're going to deal with it.
Oh.
Which is just what Warren was saying.
I
But
mean,
one part, you know,
Susan, oops, sorry. Go ahead, Warren.
if it's a law enforcement thing and we go in that direction and it's one of those things that goes into a sifter and it's like, oh yeah, this really needs to be referred to law enforcement, pass a law,
Yeah.
that safety check law. Okay, that's one path. That gives you an option where, you know, something comes into the board, this gets over referred, that goes this way. It's that other piece. You know, I may come up with something that looks like a rational ordinance inside of the town, but then what do you do with it? If
Yeah.
it's not going to be referred to law enforcement, then it sounds like this panel or this board is going to be the only people who are going to possibly deal with it. I don't know.
So, but whether there will be a panel or board is something that's for us to think about, and complements what Warren will be doing with his research. So it sounded to me what you were saying, Leslie, you were suggesting that basically the town board be that panel for complaints we get for a while anyway. I'm not
Well,
sure I want to do
even if
that.
we just, no, I mean, it just, you know, whether, you know, we should be aware of who's complaining, what are they complaining about?
Mhm.
You know, are there, you know, I'm sure Warren will come up with, with, you know, legal things that are in place, right? You know, that 240-20 or whatever it is, you know, can apply in certain situations, at least according to Guy. But I don't know. I thought it was interesting what Sue Wilcox talked about. Heine Wilcox talked about when she had trouble with it was a motorcycle shop next door at the end of Muzzy Road, where Muzzy dumps into 96B. And she
Remember.
lived right next door.
Mhm.
And I mean, she went and talked to them, but she said you know, she said the board said they'd try and help her, you know. I don't know what that looks like, and Warren's going to come up with some ideas for us. But I think, I think knowing what people are complaining about, where I'm sure seasonal is an issue. I think we need to be aware of what people are complaining about. You know, we don't want to see, you know, what's going on Howland Road today. Anybody know? What are they doing up there?
Well, it's quiet on the
Anybody
western
know?
front. Mhm.
No.
Nope.
They suffered enough. I don't know what's going on up there.
Right.
No news is good news in that regard.
Well, I don't know about that. Yeah. We haven't heard anything. You're right though about that. But I would like to be aware, Janice, if you get any complaints or people concerned about noise issues.
Refer them to Leslie.
Hey, sure.
Thank you, Warren. I really
Yeah.
appreciate this. It's
Well, I'm not sure I'm clear what we're asking Warren to do. What I'm hearing is that Warren is going to research.
Yeah.
But it sounds like what the research is going to be, you know, what others are doing and what works and what doesn't. Is the scope of that include the possibility of those panels in your mind, Warren? Or
I've got an opinion that is only as expert as everybody in front of me, you know, when it comes to just talking about serving the public in that way. And I can only say that the selection of those humans is going to have to be tremendously compassionate, patient, and yeah.
I was going to target some social workers in town.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, kindness is going to be really
Yeah.
critical.
Yeah,
But you
It's a
could, you,
raw thing. It's
Yeah.
really a raw thing.
you can tell us though whether or not this has been done elsewhere. And how they go
Well,
about,
yeah.
how they go about,
Right,
and how
right.
they have gone about staffing them. Whether they use
Burnout.
volunteers, and if so, how did they identify them? And if it was professionals, how did they do that? Just so we got something to go by. I mean, so we don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
I mean, it was having some sort of a group like that, no matter what you call it, was something that came out of the public comment. And was, and you know, it seemed to find traction among those who were participating in the discussion as being, perhaps if it can be done, something that would be a useful addition to just having a law.
Yeah,
But-
there's precedent out there, tenants committees,
Yeah,
neighborhood action committees. You just got to figure out how you feel about conscription, and you know what it's like to get anybody to do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To volunteer and serve and stuff, but yeah. But yeah, we can certainly pick an ideal and then come up with I can't think of that, comparables, a real estate term, but come up with ways that other folks have dealt with finding those populations.
So
Yep.
would you be willing to, I mean, we could keep talking about this because it's a wonderful subject, but I think we have a pretty good idea. And then are you willing to come back to us with something? And then we can, yeah.
all progress. We're not gonna ask him to finish this all in 1 month. Come
Right.
back at the next meeting with an answer, right?
Right,
No.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
just,
No, a couple of months. And
Yeah.
what I'll do is just instead of disappearing for a year, I'll try and update you. I guess the first thing you're looking for is just the fact that a message to the public
Oh.
in some way. I'll send it to one of you. Maybe I'll send it to Catherine, or I'll send it
Yeah.
to Bill, for editing. And
Probably won't get
And
it in
just-
this month's news because the deadline is tomorrow.
yeah,
Yeah.
I doubt it.
We could report it could go in the next one.
it can go on the website. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh, it could do that. Yeah.
Yeah,
let's not
Yeah,
forget the
just-
website.
that's
No.
right. I think that's a great idea. And then maybe
Mhm.
in that little box where noise is the check mark, there could be a little link to the paragraph.
Oh,
Mhm.
there's an
I-
idea.
But anyway,
That would be good use of the website.
Yeah,
And then we could, we could put it in the news eventually, for,
Yeah.
next month. Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause people are wondering
next
where-
month after all the answers are come up with.
Yeah, right.
Warren comes up with all the answers.
Basically, I told Warren, we're sort of expecting him to be the knight in shining armor who's going to rescue us.
Yes, all those students waiting for me on Monday may have something to say about that.
Yeah. So do we need a formal motion charging him, or are we good with just an informal relationship here? We say Warren volunteered and he'll report back in a couple months.
I feel okay
if
with that.
that works for me, if that's allowable, I like it. How
Okay.
about you, Warren? Do you like that?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah, we're not running off and writing legislation and
No.
then passing said legislation, right? Like I said,
Right.
librarian,
Next month.
it just,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Well-
great. Thank you for
Thank
joining.
you. Thank you.
Thanks, Warren.
The next item, the proposed revision of rules of procedure for privilege of the floor is something that Sarah was going to work on. And I texted her this afternoon, obviously she would be here. She was feeling well enough to be here, and she's not. She said she'd be working on it, but she wouldn't have it ready for tonight anyway, so I move we table this till next month.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll second that.
yeah.
Okay. So is that a resolution to table? It is,
Nah.
isn't it?
We don't need to do that. Okay,
Okay. Look at commercial zones. Recall we started a conversation last time about cannabis sales and consumption sites. The question is whether or not we should modify our zoning to accommodate them specifically, or whether we're okay with what's in there now. The question was raised about the commercial zones and whether they would be appropriate. And David's going to help us look at that.
well, you mean he's gonna put the map up?
Yeah.
We need new maps.
We've got new maps.
I want a printout copy
Oh,
in color.
So
just need
I
a color
figured I'd
printer.
walk through. We don't have a lot of commercial zoned parcels in the town, so it's fairly easy to walk through all of them quickly. We have two commercial zones, commercial B and commercial C. Commercial B properties are this light pink. So the old dance club at Comfort and 96B is commercial B. Most of the intersection of Muzzy Road and 96B is commercial B on both sides. And then there's one more parcel just outside West Danby Hamlet. Zoom that over there.
Oh,
Oh.
Here,
Short road.
oh, yeah.
Huh.
Okay.
What was it? What used to be there?
The garage. The
Was it a
building's still
garage?
there. Cleaner. That's Fairchild.
Right, right.
Mhm.
Huh. Do you think he wants? Maybe he wants to.
Well, it's interesting that it's still zoned. It's still zoned that a lot of our commercial zones, as you know, were just sort of historical artifacts of where
Right.
they had been a business once upon a time.
Right,
We got rid of a lot of them, but that one's still there.
Yeah.
Probably because
Right.
the building's still there. So
still, the building is still there, yeah.
yeah.
yeah,
Okay, so, and then that was B and C, there's no C in West Danby, right?
correct.
Right.
And there's
C
C.
is the old sawmill on Bald
Oh,
Hill.
wow, it's Bald Hill
Yeah.
Road.
Ralph Roberts, former.
The parcels that were just slated for redevelopment for Sunbeam Candles on Hornbrook. This small piece of the Dobson parcel that includes the one larger building there.
Oh, God.
But only, it has this little strip from the street, but it's that piece way
Right.
back there. And then the storage business on 96B. So those are commercial C. That is the least restrictive zoning, the place where you can have old bookstores and smoke shops and
Bars, can you have
industrial.
bars? Can we have
Yep.
bars there?
Yep,
Yeah, and you can have adult entertainment.
yes. So it's not very many parcels,
Right,
but that's where it is. And then the other parcels where commercial activity, significant commercial activity is allowed is the Hamlet centers, which are 96B around Gunderman and 96B around Bald Hill, and then the center of West Danby. And I did want to point out that there is also commercial allowed in the Hamlet neighborhood on corners. And it is also vaguely possible that someone could pursue a variance from that requirement and put a commercial business. It would have to be very small. There's a 3,000 square foot size limit for that zone for commercial.
But that would allow for the possibility of it being in the Hamlet neighborhood zone, but not on a corner.
Yes, if we didn't create a different use other than general retail or
Mhm.
a bar.
Mhm.
And if you, any specific use you create would then reduce, you could decide you only want it in the Hamlet Center, or you only want it in commercial B and C, or commercial B and C and the Hamlet Center. You know, that's the kind of the first step is, do we define this as its own use that's different from any other store? And then if so, then where do you allow that? And what requirements do you want? As I've said before, I think that our requirements for businesses in the hamlet of keeping them very small is really, it's a different way of thought than most municipalities are approaching these kinds of businesses. Most municipalities have approached this with, we want it far away from everybody. We want it to have huge buffers. We want to make sure it has plenty of parking. So you end up with these really big and impactful things instead of something small scale that can fit in. I personally think you're better off finding ways to make it fit in rather than finding ways to
Yeah,
keep it
Set it
on
apart.
the edges. Yeah.
Mhm.
But that's just my opinion. Maybe people feel differently.
So in your opinion, which you're sharing, do you really think we need anything?
I do think that it would be good to define it as a specific use, particularly because I don't think it would be appropriate in the Hamlet neighborhood. If you want to differentiate it from just general retail, I think that would be a good idea.
So it would then go only in the Hamlet core and the commercial zone?
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to allow it in the commercial zones. I don't have a strong opinion on that. There's so few of them. It does again seem like the kind of circumstance where you could end up with something big, at the old Oasis or somewhere. That actually seems like the most likely because of the traffic.
Mm-hmm.
This business,
Unlikely to do it on the old sawmill site, but
yeah, it seems pretty unlikely. I mean, you never know, I suppose, but
Mhm. So what you're suggesting is if it would be permitted use in the Hamlet core.
yes, and you might even impose a stricter size requirement, keep it really small.
Mhm. Which in the Hamlet core, the current limit is what, 3,000 square feet?
I believe in the Hamlet neighborhood, it's 3,000 square feet. In the core, I think with site plan review, it can be up to 6,000. Without site plan review, I think it's 2,000 was the limit. But site plan review is not a huge barrier.
No, basically it's allowed. It's a matter of making sure that you can reasonably accommodate it at that size.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, but my guess is that Danby doesn't want a marijuana emporium, and that a marijuana cafe may be more along the lines or boutique of what would fit in and be appropriate in the hamlet. And so regulations that kept it very small and in the scale of a hamlet, I think would be important.
So are you thinking along the lines of, the commercial design guidelines? I mean, something specific. Can you do something specific for a bar or for?
Well, you can set a size limit, square footage limit, and then it would have to comply with the
Design guidelines anyway,
guidelines,
regardless of the size.
Yeah, which I do think serves us well if we enforce them in a process.
Yeah.
I have my concerns are not so much
No, no.
about business, but the kind of thing that would happen. I do think it matters that we don't have smoking outside the establishment. And I don't mean just because it's smoking marijuana, because I don't care about that. I care about smoking. it could be cigars, cigarettes and everything, but if people are hanging around outside, that affects all the other people in a vicinity. And if we, when somebody's, for instance, at the cidery, I know that people drink outside. I don't know that I've ever seen or hardly have seen anybody smoking there. Not that I've been there, every week. I could ask Sabina because she is. But there are ways to, with the kind of establishment, some people are inclined not to smoke because they're in crowds of people. But with marijuana, if they are allowed to smoke it outside, I think they would be inclined. I have friends that smoke, they light up whenever they can.
Mhm.
And they cough, because it burns and they cough and the smell is so. Anyway, those are my concerns. I wouldn't mind having it next door if there were rules about you can't have like clouds of smoke.
Do the current prohibitions on smoking in public places apply? I mean, smoking is smoking, isn't it?
Yeah, good luck, Joel. By the time the cop gets there, it's all dissipated. Some things, they're great on paper. I don't know. That's
Well, but
my immediate
if we were
reaction.
gonna, yeah, but if we're saying you can't smoke outside and you can't smoke inside, in case you can't smoke.
You're right. That's why I'm saying, I don't know what the answer for that particular issue is. If we don't allow them to smoke inside in a quote cafe, a marijuana cafe, then they are going to smoke it. Or you could say it's simply a cash and carry. That's it.
Mhm.
That's all we allow at the cash and carry. Like we don't say you can go to the store and buy a loaf of bread, peanut butter and jelly and go outside and make your sandwich on your car. I don't know. I'm trying not to be ridiculous, but
No, gummies
Pat,
only.
Pat, if you're trying to,
Gummies
Pat-
only, right? Or brownies too. Brownies.
wait,
Pat, you're muted.
I think, yeah.
I don't know, well, there's a sales issue,
And
and
then
then
the
there's a
consumption, right.
consumption issue. Can they
Right.
be
Yeah.
the same place?
We didn't,
I didn't
we
think
didn't
so.
vote, we didn't vote to eliminate either one of those back when we
Right.
could have.
Right, but they can't
still
be in the
can't
same
stop
place. They can't be
Right.
in the same place. So you can buy, and where you buy, you're not supposed to consume. Does that make a difference?
Or what I'm asking is, is it consumption sites actually?
It's a bar, it's like a bar.
Yeah. How are you
Yeah.
going to consume? Well, if smoking is not allowed in a public place, which a bar is, in a consumption site would be, smoking
know,
of
I don't know what
marijuana
the
would not
answer
be
is.
allowed in that facility.
Right.
Well, I think it would be like a cigar bar, right? There are cigar bars where you are allowed to smoke inside.
Is that right?
Yeah, there's one on Meadow.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so if people wanted that, then they could have it. It would be inside and there could be filtration and blah, blah, blah. And then
Mm-hmm.
nobody's the big, I'm not gonna go sit around in it because the fact is, I don't mind the smell or anything, but a lot of it. And the other thing is, no matter what kind of smoke it is, it's not good for your lungs. And that's
That's
up to the
right. Smoke
people
is-
who are participating. It's not fair to do it to the neighbors. That's all I care about is don't do it to the neighbors.
Secondhand smoke.
Right. Well, and it's just can be obnoxious. Like I lived in a townhouse. I know how obnoxious it can be. And,
live in
and
a
I also
dormitory.
know my neighbors, I finally said to them, when you're going to light up your grill, would you please tell me ahead of time so I can close my windows? Because
Mhm.
they dump a whole bottle of lighter fluid on it, and light
Yes.
a match to it
Yeah.
within like seconds. So I did that and they did, and it was wonderful, but not everybody's able to do that and not everybody will respond. So
Yeah,
anyway, I'm done.
we're gonna have to
my
have
thing.
a smell complaint committee.
Yeah.
I think Warren said he'd do that.
Oh God, Warren, now you're really on it.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like, there's nothing we can do about, well, besides complaining to the owners. I mean, I feel like I want to think about where these places might be able to go. I don't know, you know.
Well, that's
the-
what we're
the-
doing right now.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, like the old Oasis site. I mean, you know, that,
Well, we don't have to allow it there. I mean,
so
if we make it just a hamlet core,
that's on B, commercial B.
right. If we make it just the hamlet core and don't include the commercial zones, other than hamlet cores, then, you know, hamlet cores is where we go. And then we could say how big it could be in the hamlet core, not to exceed whatever, 3,000 square feet, 2,000 square feet. Then, you know, if they want to make it bigger, it's a variance. That would be an area variance.
See, I said I wasn't going to talk again, but I am. I mean, I don't have a problem with somebody buying a farmhouse somewhere and making it a smoking barn. I don't think that the issue is that it has to be in or out of the core. It could be, I'm serious when I said it could be next door to me, as long as they had the, you know, I never even heard about the cigar barn, but if there's such a thing. This is not like a terrible, we don't think, unless we find out that, well, Leslie, when you were in Maine, did you find out anything about the security or danger?
You know, there's added security and they have problems with, you know, people robbing the bread store next door, you know, things like that. But,
Yeah,
but otherwise, I mean, people aren't complaining,
right.
but it's
My
also, most
understanding-
of the places are right along sort of, you know, the
Route
Miracle
1.
Mile thing,
Yeah.
where there aren't any neighbors. There
Yeah.
aren't any, it's not in a residential section. You don't want to, do you want a bar in a residential section? I don't, you know, probably not.
Well, isn't that the core? I mean, Hamlet core, we're saying that's a residential section,
It
Well,
is.
yeah, but I mean, it's where also we want to concentrate our businesses.
right?
So this is a business.
So the sales would be business, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
I
I mean, what's the business model for a consumption site? If they're not selling the product.
Well, they would be selling, just like
They're
a bar,
selling.
they would be selling what you consume.
Right.
But it's a business.
Yeah,
It's,
so
you
so
buy
you
what you
do,
consume there. You don't, just like you don't buy a 12-pack at a bar.
right.
okay, so but you do
Right,
buy
so-
the joint, you could buy a joint at a consumption site.
Yeah,
So it is a sales and consume in one place.
In the consumption site.
Yeah, the consumption site. And the sales site would be, yeah, difference of that is that the sales site is not a consumption site.
Right.
It's where you go to buy a whole bag of the stuff, and take it home, make your own. Brownies or whatever, or you buy gummies or whatever. Pre-made brownies or whatever.
I can't help but I keep thinking about this as like that Rasta, whatever it is.
Rasta Spa.
No, that the crazy winery over on Seneca Lake with the hippie stuff all over and the signs. I forget the name of it. It's hysterical. I mean, it has all that kind of paraphernalia stuff inside, but you don't hear anything when you go to it. People are in there, they're tasting the horrible wine and trying to act nice about it. And
Rasta
it's fun.
Ranch.
What is it?
Rasta Ranch.
Yes, it's hysterical. It's a hysterical place and it's not noisy outside. I wouldn't, who knows? Anyway,
The issue is whether do we need to decide tonight whether we want it, what the zones are in, because we need to get to that point if we do.
yeah,
Well, yeah, I mean, the point of bringing this all up was, this is coming. We said we will allow it. And the question before us is, do we want to restrict it in some way in addition to what's already in our zoning for retail establishment?
And I assume we've already decided that we're not restricting it in the, because that has never come up in the hamlet centers. The only question is whether we allow it in the commercial zones. That was the issue, I believe, on the agenda.
Or we could And I'm not sure we made any decisions about where we don't or don't want it. I mean, we could take the same attitude that other places have taken, which is say we don't want it in a hamlet. We want it only in a, you know, separate large facility outside the ed, you know, with ample adequate parking, and, you know, you're making a big thing out of it someplace else, but not in the hamlet. David suggested, and I'm inclined to go that way too. It'd be better to have it be something that would be regarded as appropriate for the hamlet, as long as it's not out of scale.
Right. So the size thing, it's
Mhm.
kind of, you know, the design guidelines, if we have,
The design guidelines don't address size, they only address appearance.
well, if, I mean,
So I mean,
We
it can be
have-
any size and still comply with
Yeah.
the design guidelines. But we
There
can,
are,
but we
there
can
are
say, you know,
size
we
limits. There are size limits.
in the zoning now. That's right.
Yeah.
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 So- And you know, if we're okay with what's in there, then we don't need to do anything about that. If we think that that they're too big, we could make it that this particular kind of business, it needs to be smaller than other kinds of businesses. I mean, do you think that? Or are you okay with what's in the zoning now, which is what, 2,000 square feet without site plan review and more with?
I think I'm muted. I'm not muted. Been talking.
we didn't get a lot of feedback when it was brought up. You know, people weren't concerned about it.
Right.
Right.
Well, of course, you know, they'll become concerned if we find that what we're permitting is a disaster. If we're reasonably comfortable that it's not, and that we've got an adequate provision for it, then we don't need to do anything special. We just say, okay, you know, it's going to be treated like any other retail business.
Yep.
As any other retail business could go in those commercial zones outside of the hamlet core. And I'm hearing Catherine saying, so what's wrong with that?
But I believe it can also, there can be retail businesses in the
Hamlet neighborhood zone
Hamlet
on the
neighborhood
corners.
as well.
That's correct, on corners. And as David mentioned earlier, when we were talking about the other rezoning, it can also be on appeal, because it's an area variance. Somebody could make a case for why they should be allowed to do it not on a corner.
I suggest we restrict it to the Hamlet Center. Period.
I'm not crazy about that tighter restriction personally, but that's me.
Mhm. Personally, I
What
think it
is
could
your
be,
preference then? What else do you want besides the Hamlet neighborhood?
Right
I'd
next
be okay with
door.
any place, right?
Right next door, so I can walk to it with my friends. No, I'm kidding, sorry.
Yeah. No.
Oh, Siri, I don't know.
I think,
Yeah. I mean, I was surprised when it came up that you know, more people weren't concerned about it. I mean, I think I was more concerned about it than anybody else. But you know, if it's a business,
You know, we talked about in the very beginning that we probably weren't even gonna likely see very many applications because
Right.
there's not gonna be a lot of them around the county because it's too much competition amongst themselves. I don't, and maybe the regulations with the state are too heavy. I don't even know. But
we
that
may
was
be,
one,
we may be talking a very
Can
low
work it out.
probability event. It's just that we want to be prepared just in case.
right, exactly.
I mean, the state might decide that, you know, the best way to do these things is in small emporium type things. And then, you know, somebody say, well, Middle Danby might be a good place for one.
oh,
Yeah.
I mean, I sort of feel like I need to drag out the commercial design guidelines and see if that fits for me. I mean, that's
Yeah.
right now, that's what it is, right? I mean,
Yeah, that would apply
That
to
and a
any,
size limit.
any
But
business.
yeah, so we have a size limit for retail stores.
Right.
There is not a size limit for bars and restaurants.
bars and restaurants.
Oh,
So the consumption side could be regarded as a.
It's not a
comparable-
business? A bar isn't a business?
Well, it's a business,
a
but it's not a
retail.
retail. It's
It's
not a
not-
retail store.
It's not a what?
It's not a retail store.
It isn't?
they might have one
Find
attached
it as
to it.
something different called a bar.
Yeah.
I mean, they sell drinks at retail, but
Yeah. So,
it's certainly not a wholesaler.
Some restaurants have gift shops as part of them. That would be a
Yeah.
retail part of a business.
Mhm.
But most restaurants, if you can buy a T-shirt from them, like the Saigon Kitchen, but that's about it.
Mhm.
So we have
Okay.
those defined as two different uses. So
right,
it would be my job to interpret if someone came up with something that seemed unclear of what it was. That is within my job to decide what it is.
Mhm. Yeah. Which decision can be appealed to the BZA if somebody felt strongly that you got it wrong, but.
Yeah.
So right now, we would be treating consumption sites as if they were what?
A bar.
Like a bar. And sales sites like a retail establishment, which is defined as that which is not a bar or restaurant, but not wholesale either.
do we need some kind of guidelines about a bar, restaurant,
We've got them.
consumption site? No,
Well, they would apply, the commercial design guidelines would apply.
oh, I
but
thought you
other
just
than-
said they wouldn't.
Yeah, they do.
No, the commercial
guidelines are-
guidelines apply. The size limit does not. There's no size limit in our zoning for those uses, only for the retail store.
Hmm.
We could add a size limit for those.
For consumption, yeah.
What could
Yeah,
we just keep it under, it has to stay under a certain size? We don't want a 6,000-foot one.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So wait,
So right
there's
now-
no size limit now for bars and restaurants?
That's correct.
Most of them are self-limiting.
This is
It's
true.
very expensive to have a restaurant.
Yeah. On the
But
other hand,
anyway,
yeah, true.
Yeah, but tables and space is the cheapest thing to add, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
So we got design guidelines, but we don't have a size limitation for the consumption site.
Correct.
Okay, I'm gonna say then, because we're gonna just, I think, okay, have a size, an upper limit size, we should pick something. If we can do that. Just for moving ahead, somebody have some other ideas, suggestions, yes, no?
Yes.
2,500 feet, I don't know. My school was at 2,000 feet and there was a whole lot of space in that building.
Yeah.
Could
Well,
be
town-
1,500.
I think about the town hall's about 2,000 square feet. The main
The
meeting
whole-
room,
What part, the meeting room?
yeah.
Yeah, that's probably
About
plenty big.
as big as you'd want, I don't think.
Yeah.
And 2,000 is conveniently what's already allowed without site plan review for retail.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It'd be a number that makes sense.
yeah. I'm okay with that.
Me too. So why don't we propose that?
I mean, is this do we feel like this is coming this month? I
No,
mean,
no. I mean, no, what we're saying is, we're converging on what we'd like to add, if any changes
Yeah.
to. So, and that's the one thing we've got so far. Pat's proposed that we limit them to the hamlet cores. Catherine suggested we should have them in every corner of the town.
just in her neighborhood. Yeah.
I've got everything else in my neighborhood, why not?
Yeah. All I'd support limiting them to the Hamlet Core, but I think it'd be an asset, frankly, rather than a liability. Might
Good.
Drive traffic to all our other businesses that are in
Probably
the middle of
depends on
town.
who owns it.
Yeah, right. Mm. Right.
And we don't have any charge over that.
Attract all the people in their electric cars to come to the middle of town.
So either let's do something, or as Leslie was asking, do we have to do it tonight? But one
Don't
or
have to
the
do it
other,
tonight. Right.
I
getting,
don't think you're making a motion tonight. If you want me to work on a zoning amendment, you're giving me some
Okay.
guidance of what to
Yeah.
bring
Okay.
back to you.
rock
Yeah.
on.
Go
Okay.
for it.
And so far, the two things that are in that proposal, which we can vote on whether we want to include in that, is that to limit it to the Hamlet core, and to have it be limited to 2,000 square feet.
And my understanding, there's also concern about making sure there's a requirement for
Smoking
nuisance
inside.
smells. Yeah,
Yeah.
that there's
Yeah.
some kind of filtration so
Yeah.
that you
I
wouldn't
mean,
have.
I'm not
So you're
wedded to the
not, so you're
Hamlet.
not you're not perfuming the whole neighborhood the way the hemp facility did in Howland Road.
Right, actually, right.
Yeah.
That was an issue for them, actually.
Yeah.
I'm not wedded to the Hamlet core thing, but
I'm not either.
Can make it allowed in all zones, just like cottage industry.
If you
home
could do-
occupation,
well, with the problem-
Yeah.
See Pat shaking
anything
her
else.
head.
it would
Put a
qualify
huge
as a home
garage
occupation.
up,
It could
a
be
warehouse.
It could be a home occupation if it met the criteria for how many employees and whether you have external evidence and, yeah.
Yeah,
And
a
with
huge,
site plan
a
review,
huge
if you
storage
don't.
barn
Yeah.
and 20 trucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it meets the definition of cottage industry though, because you're not making things. Well, you could be.
Could be.
It's like a bakery, right?
Yeah.
Could be just a, marijuana brownie factory.
How many more things do we have on the agenda here?
Yeah, come on.
Go.
Well,
Okay, David's gonna come up with something that we
Yes.
work apart.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, but he needs some guidance. He's getting mixed messages big time.
It is, yeah.
It's all right. I'll just choose who I like the most.
Yes.
If you're okay with that, then we can, then we'll move on.
Oh, this is really, yeah.
You put a proposal on the table. Yeah. I guess the bottom line is there does seem to be concern that we need something more than what would apply without any additional restrictions.
Yeah,
We just don't agree on what the additional things are yet. We can think about it. Maybe you could just with some options, David, and we can
Yeah.
tick them off. Yeah.
Sounds good.
good idea.
Good.
Okay. Laura's been sitting here patiently waiting all evening for us to get to the update on the budget process.
Conversation to listen to. I enjoyed this conversation tonight on all these different subjects. So did you,
Okay.
you were talking about okay, Joel, I'll let you.
Well, I was going to say, I'm pretty much going to turn it over to you to speak to this, so go ahead.
Okay, okay. So the next item on the agenda was the update on the budget process. So I kind of have some ideas here timeline wise. And one of the things that I've been thinking about in my mind is making this timeline so that we're going to be able to have maybe several finance committee meetings as well. We can involve the finance committee in coming up with some of the ideas of some of the few of the different line items that we wanted to kind of change around a little bit. That would give us some time. So by Friday, I know I thought I'd have this done last week, but I kind of worked on it on the weekend, this weekend too. By this Friday, I'm going to come over to the town hall and distribute some of your packets, one for David, one for Steve, one for Janice. Of course, I'll have the other packets ready for the highway department here, the water department. We want to weigh in with the food pantry. the pond, you know, and I know that we'll be probably, I know we'll have all of these conversations in, but anyway, I came up with a timeline. That is, you know, I have from the state their suggested calendar, but I think it would be best if we're a few weeks ahead of that. So we have a little bit more time. So if I give those packets out by Friday, was thinking it would be great if I could get them back by September 9th. And the reason I say September 9th is that's going to give us some time in there. There's some other figures and estimates that I need to gather from this seat too. Also, Joel is going to be working with the union. Oh, that's another thing you were going to bring up too, Joel, something about the union.
Yeah, that's a little later on the agenda.
Oh, is that on the
Yes,
agenda?
that is the next item.
Oh, okay.
Well, no,
I'm
it's not the
sorry.
next item. It's
Okay.
after the
Two
credit
more
card
times
policy.
the union, because we're talking about salaries. So if
Mhm.
we had a 3-week time frame in there, it gives us time to have some finance committee meetings for you to gather that. Still, the state suggests we get those back by the 20th, but if we could get them back by the 9th, then I could put a the tentative budget together so that we have something to work with. Submit it to the town clerk by the 16th, which will then allow her to be able to present that at that second board meeting in September. So she could, at the second board meeting, and I was thinking maybe we could meet early on that day so that I could kind of go through some things with you guys where with the budget that's put together at that time, where we stand, what the assessments look like, where that particular levy looks like, what that particular levy looks like at this time. Let's talk about the tax cap and give you a good starting place. Then you can decide, what do we want to do? Do we want to, which of the departments, do we want to call them all in? Do we want to have Zoom meetings? Do we want to call special meetings? How many meetings you want to get into from there? But at least if I got those and we set up a date that they're returned to me by the 9th, that gives 3 weeks. And then I can reach out to the finance committee, see when we can meet, get an agenda together, you know, and start looking at a few things. That'd give us time.
Right, and there's 2 other components of the budget process that are apart from that. The capital projects planning, which basically I want to use the ARPA group as a
Yes,
basis for doing that, because it's broader than just ARPA, but ARPA is a big part of it.
absolutely. In those, you know, if we get that started, anytime you can start having those meetings.
Yeah.
And the quick get all those meetings together and start talking about some of that stuff.
And the other thing is that we should be looking at a multi-year financial plan too, so that we can look at our budget in the context of more than just the narrow lens of 1 year.
Right. And by getting it going at this rate, that'll give us plenty of time for the rest of September and all of into October to work on those things.
So I need to convene.
Start in November, because we don't have to have it done until, when does it have to be submitted?
It's usually before or right after the
Thursday immediately.
November vote. Whenever that is, yeah.
Okay, so we'll have some time in here.
Yeah, but it's, you know, there's a lot to review and it takes.
Sure
time.
is.
Yeah.
Sure is. It takes the time.
Mhm.
So, you know.
Anyway, that sounds like a good start to the process. And we have already had some discussion in staff, because there are a couple adjustments that we might want to think about, and I'd like the board to think about. You know, my sense is that we have too much on everybody's plate, and the question is, how do we help alleviate that? I mean, Laura in particular has a lot of things that have been on her to-do list for a long time.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, and
Sorry, everybody.
you know, I don't know that we could just, you know, crack the whip a little harder and say, go ahead and spend 20 hours a day instead of 18, you know, but
we're trying.
we need to figure out how to add capacity, and what's the best way to do it. And so we've had some discussion about that, but that's something we need to figure into the process, is where and how to add more support, so that we can get things that need to get done. So think about that. Okay. Can we move on to the next thing? Is there enough of that for the moment?
That's a
Sure.
good timeline. That's very good, and I'm glad we can start earlier. That's great.
Yeah.
Does that sound good then? And for you, David and Janice, you're the two staff people that are here right now, to give that 3-week period to look into that, gather your figures, and be giving you some breakdowns of all your contractual lines so that you can see what's been going on in there. You have time to meet with me, or however we want to do it. And then we'll also, and I know Janice, some of your line items that you look at, and having that finance committee, you can get your thoughts across on that, where you were thinking last year of how you were thinking of splitting some things out. 3 weeks sounds like a good time frame for you.
Sounds great.
Okay. Okay.
Good.
I mean, if you can do it quicker, that's okay too.
Yes.
But then again, you guys say that to me, could say that to me every day.
Yes.
You're waiting for it from me.
We've been known to say so, but
I know.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good, thanks. The credit card policy. We have in the credit card policy, which I reviewed because we brought it up, this provision that about keeping the cards in a secure place and only accessing them when you want to use them. That policy is honored more in the breach than in the than it is honored in fact. Anyway,
Michael called. He was just thrilled. I'm sorry to interrupt you. He was just.
well, yes, and as actually, you finally got him one, yeah. And Todd's contract called me this afternoon, saying, he has a fairly urgent purchase he'd like to make, and if he had a credit card, it would be really nice.
He just gave me his information because they just decided who they wanted to have the credit card.
Yeah, well, it's good. It's going to go to Ben, I guess. Ben Coakley, who's the.
Ben Coakley, yes. So
Yeah.
he sent me his information because there's a lot of different things that I need.
Yeah.
Bank needs to do it. So it's in the process, and everybody got theirs within like 3 days after I put it in.
Okay, good.
3-4 days. So
Yeah.
hopefully that can happen for him.
So the policy calls for them to be kept in the vault and then accessed when you need them. Marianne pointed out that it's an inappropriate use of the vault, not for that sort of thing. I don't know that that's happening anyway. The question was, what is this policy about? I mean, why did we? So I presume it's a security thing. If you can't carry it, you can't be misused or stolen. But we talked about it in staff. David pointed out that, it's a credit card. Credit cards, you've got some protection if somebody steals it anyway. The way the account is set up, each card has its own number. So who's making the purchase based on the card number for the purchase. Our procurement policy addresses documentation for purchases that are made, whether they're made by credit card or elsewise. You still need the documentation about what was bought from whom and for what purpose. And following the guidelines regarding the volume, and not the volume, but the amount of the purchase. So what do we need this for anyway? So I'm thinking that so I was proposing that we change from keeping it in the vault to having people not keep it on their person except when they plan on using it. The staff feeling was, well, why not? So the staff recommendation is that we simply delete that provision in the credit card policy that requires it to be kept somewhere other than on your person. I mean, and allow people to carry it if they want to, and use it when they need to.
For security, of this billion, all of the cards except one, you have a $4,000 credit limit on. Okay, they have a 4,000. The one that I have in my name, I might want to treat this one a little different. That has a $60,000 credit limit. The reason we have that on there That I want, at one time, what we were doing when we had a lot more time, which I want to get back into again this year, we would pay things like our salt bills, some of our big bills with that. We'd pay as many with them as we could, and we got cash back. So we get a few $1,000s more sitting in our bank that we could get some cash back on. It was a lot of work,
Mhm.
but if we can do it, we can do it. So maybe that one, we better keep it under good lock and key, because if that
Is
one.
the,
got
is the
off-
key bank, is the key bank credit card have a cashback provision?
Our whole thing does, yes.
How
We will
much
get
is,
some cash back. We will get some cash back just from what they've been used for, even this year. So
oh,
we-
sure, but I mean, what is it? Is it 1%, 2%?
I don't recall. I'm sorry. I don't.
Yeah, that's probably not the issue. But I just do have one question. Is it,
Yep.
I mean, I'm just gonna ask this because of my ignorance. Is it legal for us to buy things and get the cash back?
Yes.
Okay, then
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. I think it's a good idea, and I agree. They should be on their person. They're limited. There's all kinds of protection. Gary's granddaughter had one stolen, then that's, it happens.
It happens, it's a pain
Happens.
in the neck, but it's not,
Yes, but
but you're not liable for the purchases that are made
Right.
when it's stolen, as long as you
and
report it
usually
promptly.
usually people know very soon and it gets reported. So
Mhm.
I think it's a good idea.
So I propose that we delete that keeping it under lock and key provision.
Laura made comments that maybe the one that had a $60,000 limit should have different provisions.
What do you think of that, Joel?
Well, why? Because there's still, this is protected, whether the credit limit's 1,000 or 100,000.
I guess it can just end up to be a bigger pain in the neck. Whatever bigger pain in the neck if it were to get stolen and somebody were able to
Yeah,
really go out and make.
but there's no greater liability associated with a higher credit limit.
Okay, that's fine. It was just a thought.
That would be my thought anyway.
To consider if you wanted to think of it. If not, I'm very.
It's not a debit card, it's not like if somebody steals it, they're gonna drain your account or anything.
And the only thing that could happen, I mean, things can be stolen out of an office too. So
That's right.
I don't think,
True.
David actually thought it might be more secure in your person than it would be in your desk drawer.
yeah.
Okay, so you're proposing that we get rid of the number 1 under card holder and department head responsibilities. We'd need to get rid of number 4 under town board auditing responsibilities. And number 2 under credit card violations include but are not limited to.
I was checking that out because I only had it in one place.
Now,
Hmm.
so there's 1, 2, 3 sentences that have to get crossed out.
So did you catch all that, Janice? It's on the tape, right?
Want me to say it again?
Yeah, say it again.
Under card holder and department head responsibilities, scratch line 1. Town board auditing responsibilities, scratch line 4. That says verification that credit cards are kept in the vault. Under credit card violations include but are not limited to, number 2 is failure to keep the credit card in the vault.
Mhm.
That was all I could find.
Yeah. So the first one is the substance that the credit card's supposed to be kept in the vault.
Well, you don't want to have that one taken out and then have all the other ones.
Yes,
kept
no,
in.
that's right. No,
Yeah.
absolutely right. You're absolutely correct. So that was a motion by Leslie. I'll be happy to second it.
Okay.
Further discussion?
What resolution would this be, Janice?
I have us on 171.
Wow, okay.
Mhm. Okay, Janice.
Oh, Connors,
Aye,
Hunter,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes,
Gagnon.
Yes. Next up, we have,
okay, Joel, I mean,
we're past
we're-
time without a resolution, right?
I
Way
know
Yes.
over.
we're
yeah,
supposed to do the credit card holders thing.
but we're
We haven't
past,
done that.
we're outside the time limit, so we need a vote to continue the meeting.
I move that we extend the meeting for 10 more minutes.
Okay.
Second.
Hang
Um,
on, move to extend meeting by 10 minutes by, please seconded by Catherine. Okay,
Yes,
Connors, Hunter. Hunter,
Yes.
Woodworth.
Yes.
You stay awake another 10 minutes?
No. Gagnon.
yeah,
Yes, yeah. Um,
okay, so the credit card holders name, we haven't done that in forever. And we're supposed to do that.
we're supposed to say who they are.
Right, credit cards in the name of the first was the Danby Town Highway Department. We've got Carl Seaman, Laura Shawley, Kent McNeil, and James Seeley. So
Oh,
who should be on that?
We should have Keith Shipman, Laura Shawley, Jack Shawley. And we do have one in for Kent and Jim. We have-
Okay, so Kent and Jimmy keep the, okay.
Yes.
Okay. And Carl's removed.
Yes,
but yeah. Mhm.
Okay. And the credit cards in the name of the town of Danby will be issued to, I've got Paul Hansen and Pamela Goddard.
they're,
No.
they're both off.
Yeah, we
Okay.
do have the clerk. And I know it should be by position rather than by individual, shouldn't it?
No. Janice,
The bank requires the person's name.
name.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
but I
so-
mean, the person's name might change, but for
Too bad.
No,
policy,
it's gotta be a name.
So who else besides Janice?
me.
Oh, boy.
David,
David, Steve,
Steve.
Teresa
Uh,
has
Ben
one.
Ben Coakley.
Okay, yeah, I got his name down.
Teresa
Ben
Singer has one.
Teresa,
Uh-huh.
mhm,
Not Diane.
No, it's in Teresa's name.
It's interesting.
Mm.
okay, that's 1, 2, 3, 4,
you'll
5.
see some coming
Six.
through. Still Janice, if you're looking at the credit card.
And Michael Short.
Yeah,
Michael.
Michael. You'll see some coming through, just so that the expenditures are gonna have to,
So there's 7 people in the town, and then 4, 5 in highway.
Who are
Okay.
the
I
5 in
wonder-
highway?
Keith Shipman, Laura Shawley, Jack Shawley, Kent McNeil, and James Seeley.
Okay.
they rarely ever use theirs, but they're there just in case they have to. go
Yeah.
get supplies.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Or if they have to drive a truck out of town or something and need something in
Right.
case they run into an emergency.
right. So I move that we approve this updated credit card holders list. And that's
I'll second that.
resolution 172.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wait, no, because you moved to extend the meetings.
Oh, that was in between. Oh my gosh, 173.
72, so.
3.
This would be 173.
Right, 173 is this
Okay.
one moved by Leslie. Who seconded this one?
I did.
By Joel. Ready?
Yep.
Aye.
Connors,
I,
Hunter, Woodworth,
Yes.
Gagnon.
Yes.
right.
Right. I, as you know, our union negotiations are this year. And it occurred to me that it might be nice to have somebody on our side besides just me. And if one of the other board members would be interested in participating, I would be happy to have that support in the process. And I spoke to Leslie about this afternoon. She said, "Not me."
That way she's up and down.
It is right. But frankly, I'll be happy with any of you as a compliment to my efforts. Catherine or Pat or Sarah.
And what exactly is the job description for
Well, the
negotiating?
job is negotiating a new contract for essentially for the union employees, which are the highway workers. And it is our custom and I think reasonably good practice too, that what we come up with for the highway folks is generally we extend to our non-union staff as well. So it basically is setting our employment policies. I will say that, the first salvo from the union side asked for $5 an hour increase over the next 4 years, which is a non-starter in my book. So what we do end up with is there's ways and ways, and it's a back and forth. My predecessor in office, Rick, did it pretty much on his own, and he just briefed the board occasionally on how it's going. And then you got to the end, and he says, "Here's what I come up with," and the board gets to vote on it. But if you would like to be more engaged, I would certainly welcome that, rather than just say, "Here's what I come up with." Because ultimately the board has to sign on to it. I would be giving away the store if I said, "Sure, we'll do
Nobody's
$5
jumping.
an hour for the next 4 years."
Nobody's jumping. I think we should. Sarah, she's not here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you? Well, what do you think, Pat?
I know, that's who I thought would be good.
Thank you.
You go.
You mean you're volunteering, or you think okay for Sarah? Which is the okay?
Since
I-
Sarah is not here, we should ask.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you should ask Sarah.
Did you just say okay with regard to your participation, Pat, or?
No, I said thank you for.
Oh, for asking.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would
So
consider it.
nobody's real enthusiastic about doing it.
That's correct.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll ask Sarah. I mean, she's pretty busy, because I asked her about a couple of other things. She said, I don't see where I can free up the time to do it. So I'm dubious that
Highly
she'll
unlikely.
be.
Well, if she says no, bring it back.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. Okay. Yeah. So I guess I can tell Sarah that the sense of the board was that you'd be really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought Pat would be good.
Well, I did too. We can't be 3 of us, because otherwise we'd be having board meetings.
No,
Although, I mean, we could do that, if in which case it would simply be board meetings that would go into executive session, because
Right.
this kind of negotiation is something that's grounds for
got one thing left.
executive session.
Level of operation.
Yes. Are we, we bring it up each time? Are we good where we are?
Yes.
Check with Sarah. And if she says no. Oh, you mean level of operation?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I don't know, everybody I know is getting COVID.
Yeah, there's a lot of it. There's a lot of it around.
You
Not to
know-
mention flu and,
Alana's got it.
does she?
I don't know what she's gonna do with the baby. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm okay with letting it where it is.
Yeah.
Everybody else okay too? Okay, good.
Yes. Good.
Anybody have thoughts on what ought to be in the next meeting agenda, other than,
We have the public hearing, for the Hamlet
Yep.
neighborhood zone.
yep, we've got,
Rules of procedure
right, coming back up again.
for privilege of the floor,
Right.
union negotiations. What?
All this going on, I'm sure the highway superintendent will probably want to fill you in too on all the different jobs that you guys just approved and where we're at with them.
What's that?
Keith,
Kind of filling on all these different projects that you guys just approved.
Oh, sure, but that's just a regular thing. Which would come up in at the second
Oh.
meeting, not the first one, so.
well, he wants to come and talk.
Well, yeah, if you want to come and talk, we'll certainly put him on the agenda.
Yeah. Okay.
Warren's not gonna report back for a couple of months. So, all right, I mean, that, I'm okay with. I am sure that other things will come up and
They will.
and fill in the blanks. And I should point out so that we revised the rules of order, which I just noticed when I was looking at. I've forgotten that we went from a week to 72 hours, but 72 hours before the board meeting, the agenda should be in work drive in the meeting folder that will be created for the purpose. So if anybody wants to go, if you go to work drive, if it's not there, 3 or 4 meetings, 3 or 4 days before the meeting, then you can get on my case for not having gotten it there. But my objective, talking to Leslie, is actually to have it there way sooner than that. And it gets fleshed out and it keeps getting, more elaborated with, particularly with attachments and things and, associated materials as we approach the meeting time. But the bones of it, the topics that will be, tend to solidify, as much as a week or more before. So, looking at it, 3 or 4 days ahead will at least indicate, what the main topics of discussion. are
Okay.
gonna be.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Good night, everybody. Good to
Thank
see
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good
Night,
night.
everybody.
Night.
Good night.